Is set in Auckland City, home to the 36th America's Cup. They say a bad day sailing is better than a good day at work.
There's probably 5 or 6 key areas that you've got to nail and get right to get the best out of these boats.
Don't come off your foil.
We're obviously lacking in a couple of those areas.
And they look as smooth as silk.
We're looking forward to another day of racing, because this will be the last time we get to race until it starts to count in January.
Here comes a dial down. Watch this. Jimmy Spithill's going to hunt right at him and not let them tack.
We've got a long history of racing each other in this game. Yeah, I can't wait.
They have one more day of actual competing before they go off on their own again.
Yeah, today we knew we pretty much had to go out there and win both races to try and win it, and that's the same way we approach every day.
Each team has the desire to win, but only one can quench that thirst for victory. The champagne may have flowed for Emirates Team New Zealand yesterday, winning the World Series, but today is a reset. A single day of sudden death racing with the first ever PRADA America's Cup Christmas Race. No mai haramai, and welcome to Auckland, New Zealand, which has turned on a scorching day temperature-wise, and fingers across the weather gods play ball and deliver stronger winds. It's a massive day for defender Emirates Team New Zealand, as it's the last chance they get to test themselves against the challengers. Today, as the #1 seeds after winning the World Series, Emirates Team New Zealand face off against the 4th-ranked Ineos Team UK in the first sudden death semi-final. The second semi, Rossa Prada Pirelli team against Patriot from the New York Yacht Club. Both winners will meet in the Christmas race final. To take you through this first ever Christmas race, 2 men that definitely know their jibs from their main sheets. America's Cup sailors Kenny Reid and Nathan Outteridge. And Kenny, a last chance for the challengers to size up the defender and vice versa.
Well, with the World Series over, you could hear the collective sigh of relief from the Italian and American compounds. They are, in fact, competitive with the defending Kiwis. For the British, maybe it's more of a holding of the breath, but I digress. Today's another day. Another chance to win a regatta. Another chance just to win a race. And that's how these competitors think. Nathan Outteridge, a race is a race, whether it's for all the marbles or for simple bragging rights.
Thanks, Kenny. Well, yesterday was light, what we call marginal foiling conditions, and we saw all the teams struggling to keep their boats flying. I thought it made for some great racing. Today looks like it's going to be much of the same, but we have seen some tight, tense battles with Emirates Team New Zealand and Rossa Prada Pirelli yesterday, and I think we're going to see the same again today.
Semi-final #1, the pride of Great Britain.
Ineos Team UK. The British need to get through today, and tomorrow it's the beginning of a new era in the Ineos America's Cup Tour. They've known for a bit that they were off the pace, and don't think for a moment that they're waiting until tomorrow to create changes that can get this boat competitive. 40+ smart designers and engineers are working 24/7 to find more speed. Parts and pieces are likely being refined as we speak. Wouldn't be surprised to see Ben Ainsley out sailing midweek next week with a lot of new toys.
Yeah, there's still a huge amount to learn out of today before we go into the next kind of between regatta period. There's been some really significant areas that have been highlighted over the last few days, which, it's great to kind of get a full side of that at this point, because we've got plenty of time to kind of get on top of it and come out stronger in a month's time.
Facing the British World Series champions.
Emirates Team New Zealand, winners of the PRADA America's Cup World Series yesterday in what was a nail-biter against Rossa Prada Pirelli. They look fast, but I've got to be honest, they look race rusty. Today's their final chance to race against the challengers, and I'm sure Peter Burling and his crew will be focusing on nailing those pre-starts and making the most of their final day of racing before the America's Cup match in March.
I think we're just going to go out and try and do a similar practice to what we did yesterday and make the most of the conditions and try and come away with another couple of wins, hopefully. It's been a huge few days, so I think today is going to be the same with a lot of support on the outskirts, and yeah, it should be a good time.
Well, today we're out on course A in the Hauraki Gulf, expecting a light northeasterly sea breeze, a bit above the 6.5 knot lower limit. The races are completed on a upwind, downwind racetrack. Although the course may look more conventional to the average sailor, leg lengths of 3.5 kilometers and a course width of only 1.5 kilometers creates a real challenge for boat handling and staying up on the foils. Multiple laps around the track, finishing downwind. Each race should take about 25 minutes.
So what a beautiful day it is today. It's a Sunday, December the 20th, and the first ever PRADA America's Cup Christmas race, and the spectator fleet is out there. But as opposed to yesterday, it looks pretty much like they're outside the course boundaries. We had issues there yesterday. And there is a big crowd in at the Viaduct Harbour ready for racing because Emirates Team New Zealand are up against Ineos Team UK first up. Plenty of fans enjoying this summertime atmosphere. Wherever you are watching around the world, it may be tough for you, but this is how we're doing it right now. Man, that looks good, doesn't it? Christmas comes early in the city of sails where summer is calling. Let's go onto the water and above the water with Shirley Robertson. Beautiful day. Looks like a good day for sailing, Shirley, but what are you looking forward to?
Oh, Stephen, I'm looking forward to today. I'm excited. It's important. It feels like all the teams want to put a real marker down. It is, though, another lightish day out here on the Hauraki Gulf, but we're hoping that's not going to stop these magnificent boats. Stephen, we saw yesterday how even in marginal breeze, racing out here can still be edge of the seat sport. The nuances, we're beginning to see them, aren't we? In foil setup, rig shape, even in tactics in these light breezes. All new, of course, with this new class of boat. It's fascinating to see. So there may not be a lot of breeze out here, but the learning, the development, that never stops in Cupland. So we're still in for a fascinating afternoon of yachting.
Shirley Robertson, double Olympic gold medalist, our eyes and right in amongst the racing. And this is what we have. It's Sir Ben Ainsley against Peter Burling. Good starts to the Christmas race semi-final. Sudden death, win, and you're in the final. Gentlemen, this has got a nice little bit of tension about it.
It sure does. You know, it's really just kind of an interesting race day. It's a one-day regatta. It's kind of rare for us sailors, but at the same time, it's just that final chance for everybody to check in before the races start to get real. And you know, Nathan, we might see a very aggressive Ben Ainsley. For sure, it's well documented that he has a pace problem, and that potentially that Peter Burling might have a little bit of a starting issue. He hasn't been great off the starting line. Is this a place where Ainsley can get after it and maybe try to get a little early advantage?
I think both teams here have a lot to prove in the pre-starts. This is Ben's opportunity to really take control of the race. We've seen he's been very aggressive and been sailing very accurately in the pre-starts, and quite honestly, Team New Zealand really been struggling in the pre-starts, and they really want to improve that.
The big question is how well can this boat stay up on its foils? And in the pre-start, we've seen it's as important as during the racing, because if you get caught dead in the water, the chances of getting into that starting box on time is very slim.
Port entry will be to Ineos Team UK. They are allowed to enter at the 2 minutes and 10-second mark. They will be late into the box, but that's okay. They're good. Emirates Team New Zealand are allowed to enter at the 2-minute mark, and both boats will be within regulations.
They are both in on time, but we would probably say both in a little late. And let's make sure that the Brits can get across the bow of Emirates Team New Zealand. Emirates Team New Zealand is on starboard.
So I didn't make it across the bow. It's tight, you know, I guess really hard there to do a dial-up in these kind of boats. Typically in that situation, we would have seen a dial-up, but once Ben committed to come up and go above Emirates Team New Zealand, Peter really couldn't make another adjustment. And with those foils hanging so far out the side of the boat, the last thing you want to do is have the boats come together.
to 120 to start here.
On board Emirates
Boundary
Team
in
UK.
25 seconds on this course. In 20 seconds on this course.
That's the voice of Giles Scott.
Easing here. Into a
Just
drive.
easing. 10 seconds to boundary. High pitch. Yep.
Down. Turning.
So they've jibed right out near the boundary there in Emirates Team New Zealand. Not really pushing them hard. They're going to follow around. There's a bit of separation between the two boats. The real question is how are they going to make this jibe and stay on their foils? And if they do, are they early on the way back to the start?
These are two teams clearly more interested in staying up on their foils than they are with playing with each other right now.
Under 30 seconds to race start in the first ever Prada America's Cup Christmas Race. Win and you're into the final, which will be race 3 this afternoon.
He's off the foil. Try and keep it going, guys. Here we go.
Okay, take it, Pete.
Just barely up on the foils right now,
Hanging in,
Steve.
Blitz. Copy. Okay, just got it. Can you get any more? Yeah, coming over.
Clock's ticked down to 0. It is race on. Both yachts struggling to get across the start line.
Surely two boats that are struggling to stay on their foils right now, isn't it? And we can see
Kenny,
a
you
dial
called
down
it. They were a bit early turning back.
Yeah, we could see a dial down here,
time.
surely. Nope, it didn't do it.
Coming up 2 degrees.
Okay.
Well, both boats obviously very late there. Ben Ainsley got caught too low in the start box and didn't even lay the leeward end of the line, and now it looks like this tack, they've fallen off the foils. Peter Burling was late also, but had complete control being the windward boat. It meant that Ineos Team UK couldn't tack and cross that start line. I'd say that's a big win for Emirates Team New Zealand on that start.
Sorry, Shirley, I kind of talked through you there, but it was very clear in that pre-start. The main concern for both teams was staying up on the foils, and unfortunately for the Brits, that dream has come to a crashing halt.
They looked so confident for a while, Kenny, but I wondered, you know, they had a bit of time to kill on the way back. The breeze also went to the left, which made, you know, really narrow angles to the start line. And my goodness, they're really on the edge to keep that boat flying, and any kind of change is difficult.
Okay, let's go back and have a look at the replay of this start. You can see Emirates Team New Zealand just laying the pin into the line there. That red mark they're about to go above, and Ineos Team UK having to tack to get back through the line. That all set up where they chose to do their jibe a minute before the start, and I think where they jibe was probably fine, but with it being so light, they have to sail such low angles to keep the boats on the foils. And now you can see the lead's already stretched out to 500 metres after one tack in the race.
It looks like the Brits are back up on the foils again, though, which is always a good sign.
Go back to that pre-start. Obviously, light winds. You can just stay away from trying to do any shucking and jive, and you just got to get that boat across the finish line because of lack of air and struggling to get on the foils, right?
Yeah, you can see where the Kiwis would want to do that, no question about it, because they think they're in a faster boat and they just don't want to stir it up. They just want to let the boat speed do its thing.
Boundary penalty against Team Ineos UK, crossing the boundary.
I think what happened there, Stephen, was they managed to get the boat up on the foil, but then the boundary was 10 seconds ahead of them, and you've got this tough decision. It's like, well, we've just spent all this distance sailing at 90 degrees true to build enough speed. You get on the foil and you tack again, you're basically going to go back where you came from. So
penalty complete.
They've now completed the penalty. Now they're back inside the race course. But what we're seeing in these lighter winds is that on the exit of the tacks, the teams are having to sail very, very low angles to be able to keep them on the foil. And then once they get over that bottom speed hump, you can see here 14 knots not foiling at the moment with Ineos Team UK, 27 knots for Emirates Team New Zealand. They're foiling, they're going back upwind, but Peter was saying in the onboards yesterday, guys, we've got to exit at 90, which means you're not going upwind or downwind, but just to keep it on the foil. And once you're on the foil, let's take it back upwind and continue going towards the top mark.
Just hard to... I've talked to so many people around the world about yesterday's racing, and you know, it was fascinating that at no time in history have we ever said a 6.5 knot wind speed race would be exciting. But that last race between the Kiwis and the Italians was incredibly exciting for almost, you know, at times a painstaking race, because to watch these boats try to fly, everybody's trying to push it and will it and kind of, come on, go, go, go.
So the relative speed difference is quite marked. You look at the right-hand side of Emirates Team New Zealand falling just under 29 knots, and Ineos Team UK at 19. Is that about the right amount of knots they need to get up on those foils?
9 or 10 knots of wind speed, you'd think they'd be about. So far, the Kiwis have been flawless. They had a couple marginal times where they were barely getting up, maybe in the pre-start, but since then, the package on this boat, the package of hydro and aero and systems, is clearly working better than the package on board the British boat. It's that simple.
Yeah, most of the teams have said they're pretty comfortable in 8-9 knots sailing around on the jib. Except obviously Ineos Team UK, they're struggling in that wind range, and I think once it gets over 10 knots, Ineos Team UK seem to be more comfortable. But what we saw yesterday, they were racing out in 7-8 knots, and Team New Zealand and Rossa PRADA were foiling just fine and racing yesterday. So,
to back you up, Peter Burling said at the press conference yesterday, we're happy with where we are. That says it all. Emirates Team New Zealand completing leg 1
out of the boundary again.
6.
Penalty out of the boundary.
As they round the top gate, and another penalty to Ineos Team UK for a boundary crossing.
Just listen on board here as they approach the boundary for the first drive and see if we can pick up some hints on how they're sailing this boat.
Okay, nice and close. Here it comes. 3, 1. All right. Trev's a bit high.
So we saw on that overhead shot before they made that jibe, they weren't really going downwind. They were almost sailing at 90 degrees to the wind.
There's a good opportunity, Blair.
And it might have been a left-hand shift, which had them sailing at a higher angle, but I think what they were really focusing on was keeping the boat speed up, making sure that they make it through the jibe. We hear Ineos Team UK out of boundary once again. Umpires coming in there, Richard Slater. But now you can see Emirates Team New Zealand on starboard tack sailing right down the middle of the course. That's not a little bit out of bounds. That's a long way out of bounds.
I've never seen anything like that before in our America's Cup career.
Would the word staggering describe how far out of the box they are?
I mean, we should talk to the head umpire, Richard Slater, and find out what is his feeling of this. Obviously, they're not even trying to stay on the race course. Does that make it more egregious, or is a penalty a penalty?
Slightly. It's all right in that breeze.
They're a long way off that race course either way. Hopefully we get to chat to Richard Slater at some point in this race, but 33 knots straight downwind here for Emirates Team New Zealand, approaching the boundary again. Let's follow this jibe and see how smooth these guys are. It's the last chance we're going to see them until March.
There now. 2, 1. Not any high.
Okay, so one thing super noticeable today is how much slower that windward foil is coming out. In a breeze, it comes out of the water really fast. Today, they're clearly using that kind of tripod effect of the stability of the two foils and to their advantage to make sure they stay up and not getting that weather foil out of the water so quickly.
Just a reminder of what you are seeing. Left-hand side, Ineos Team UK struggling to foil, sitting at... Wow. They are slow today. And look at the speed of Emirates Team New Zealand, 14 versus almost 31 knots. They have got the Te Reho tide going today.
Shirley, I've never seen a boat just ignore the outside edge of the race course like this before. Have you?
Kenny, they're not actually making any real progress. They're basically just mowing the same bit of lawn over and over again. I mean, just so hard to watch them trying to foil. They're at, you know, at least 90 degrees. I think they need maybe 19 or 20 knots of boat speed to finally get going, and they're searching and searching and searching and not going anywhere. I think Ben Ainsley's doing pretty well to keep his cool. In contrast, we've spent much of the downwind leg with the Kiwi team. They look slicker than ever. I mean, you know, yesterday we saw them making a few mistakes in the maneuvers, and definitely there's been a lot said in the debrief, because today, you know, they look rock solid.
This is kind of a, we talked about it before. We've talked about it for a few days now. This is a weekend for the Brits to get through. Because remember, you're committed to your foils. People keep saying, I keep getting notes, why aren't they changing their foils? They can't. They actually have to declare their foils 5 days before the event, and then you can't change anything. Unlike in Bermuda, where when Nathan was sailing in Bermuda, you were changing your foils every morning, or at least through 2 sets. They can't change their foils. So they need to get through this week, and I'm sure they have a plan already in place as to what they're going to do.
Emirates Team New Zealand heading towards that bottom gate for the first time. In essence, they are racing on their own at the moment in this opening sudden death semi-final of the PRADA America's Cup Christmas Race. As they round it, and that time difference, well, that's just going to blow out. But they are on foil and on point today.
Nathan, there's a danger of getting lapped here right now because the other boat just isn't getting out of the water.
Posting a course change, shortening.
It's not looking good, is it, for the
at the lure gate.
Ineos Team UK and Ben Ainsley. He knows that they are struggling in the slider, and look at him, top of the course there. It's not even close at the moment to getting up on the foil. Meanwhile, Team New Zealand are sailing clean and polished. You'd think it's plenty of breeze looking at one of these boats. And, you know, this wind range that they've had to sail for, you know, is 6.5 to low 20s, and you know, this is very typical of March sailing conditions, and that's why Emirates Team New Zealand are trying to make the most of this sailing.
Well, they're going to have to make the most of 1.5 more legs, because the course has been rechanged to a 4-leg race. So Emirates Team New Zealand on their penultimate leg, 3 of 4 now. It started out at 6, it is now 4, and I think we probably know the reasons for that, don't we, Nathan?
Yeah, I think we know the reasons why they're shortening the race down. I think at the end of the day, this race is pretty clear who's going to win and who's going to lose. And Emirates Team New Zealand, they're going through the motions, I guess you could say, but this is a perfect opportunity for them to get on the race course in these light winds and try and improve their sailing style. You know, they don't have access to boundary software like this. We don't have access to the marks, and it's a great opportunity for us to see why they're going so fast.
But surely they want more than this. They don't want to be sailing against themselves. They're going to have at least 2.5 months of doing that.
Guys, just to take a look at how these guys are able to change the shape of their sail. These are all hydraulics. There's no boom. There's a hydraulic up and down, and then there's hydraulic ins and outs that control. So they're controlling both sides of the wing or this twin skin mainsail. So both mainsails are actually being trimmed reasonably independent from each other, but no boom. This is a whole new world. And look at how deep that sail gets as they go into the tack. So they're changing camber all the time.
You'll run it now?
Smooth as silk. They're not coming close to touching down. The other boat, Ainsley's way out of bounds again. He's doing anything just to try to get up on his foils. Nathan, he's in danger of getting lapped. And I don't know if anybody ever thought that.
I think if you look at the speed of Emirates Team New Zealand, they're going to be round the top marks probably before Ben Ainsley gets there. And quite possibly they're going to finish at the bottom of the course before Ben really starts making any headway downwind. just as I said in the background, Ineos Team UK look like they're about to start foiling here, but Ken, just going back to your comment before about the way they're controlling the power on this sail, like what a boat needs to get foiling is a lot of power. So you want a deep sail in the twin skin main. You can actually put camber in the bottom of the sail, let the leeward side of that main, the leeward skin, get deeper. Meanwhile, you can keep a little bit flatter on the windward side. And then once the boat pops up on the foil, you actually flatten both sails, you trim the main on, you go less twist and you go flatter, more efficient setup. And then as you're about to tack, you ease all the controls off, you deepen it up, so when you exit the tack, you have the power once again. And I bet you Glenn Ashby's on there right now with his controls. He's got the running backstay, he's got the Cunningham, he's got the mast rotation, he's got the sheeting angle for the sails. There's lots of things going on that boat to control it. And I think these guys have really focused on having really good power control of the sails. That's Glenn Ashby there on camera. You can see he's always focused on something. You can see how
just let
deep
the jib sheet go. You see that?
Let the jib sheet go.
Yeah. That's great. That's a great analogy, Nathan. And big ease.
So that's Pete jumping in, Glenn jumping out. Go ahead, Shirley.
We're right behind the Kiwis. I mean, it's the perfect lead shot that every coach out here would want to see. I mean, it's changing all the time. And I wonder, Nathan, if some of that's with the help of a computer, are you having to, you know, is Glenn having to make all those adjustments, you know, one by one and some sort of, you know, cascade? I mean, how does that work?
That's the million-dollar question there, Shirley. You know, I'm sure they have computer systems on board helping them with targets. You can see those green stripes through the sail. They use cameras on board to determine what the shape of the sails are. They could have cameras facing up the sails right now, telling them what their current depth is and what their target depths are for different wind ranges. Glenn could be sitting to leeward right now with a big control panel just saying, oh, we need to sheet more down the leach of the main sail to deepen it up. Now we need to just go forward a little bit. Okay, we want to bend the mast. Let's pull the running backstay on. There's a lot going on there right now, and that doesn't just happen in the light wind. It happens through the entire wind range. And I think they have one of the most sophisticated sail control systems out of all these teams. Here's the moment right here. They're about to tack on that ley line, and they've effectively lapped Ineos Team UK here, and they stick this tack and go around the top mark. They're going to be potentially at the bottom mark before Ineos Team UK even reaches the top mark. Oh, it's light though, isn't it? They didn't pull that foiling tack off. But they've still got speed and flow on the foil.
Lift in the back end of the boat. You see that, but look at, he's heading actually back towards the mark in order just to try to keep the thing going fast enough to get that foil to work.
He's just bearing away or pointing up to find the most amount of power. And once you find that power...
Look how deep that sail is, though, in order to find the power.
The main sail and the jib, super deep.
You ever think about a jibe out here, Pete? I think your tech's not much worse at that.
They're talking about jibing upwind because they think they can't pull off attack. That's what I think you just said.
Yep. Now, I heard exactly what you said, and comes back to moth sailing days. When we were sailing moths, when it gets super light like this, sometimes you decide actually a jibe is an easier way to stay on the foils and the tacks because you don't get that drag when you swing head to wind and you can just glide around. So we call it a gack, a jibe tack in the moth. And I love the fact that these guys are talking about it on an AC-75.
Only time I've ever done that is in about 60 knots in the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, this is the umpire's GBO boundary penalty.
Emirates Team New Zealand racing against themselves in the opening sudden death semi-final against Ineos Team UK, who are once again are finding real troubles to try and get up on the foils. But this penultimate gate entry by Emirates Team New Zealand has seen them splash down.
I think they're just going to try to get through this gate manually and as a displacement boat and then they'll find that long width of the racetrack like we saw Nathan yesterday. They might even jibe around and head back out again and try to build. They need to build to the long side of the track, of this skinny track.
I found it interesting, helmsman Peter Burling looking behind him. I don't know what he was looking behind him for, because he wasn't under any threat from Ineos Team UK.
Yeah, we saw yesterday. I'm not saying it can't happen. We saw yesterday a pretty large comeback from one boat that got up and the other boat couldn't. Oof.
Yeah, but that happened when the pressure came from upwind and the boat behind took it, whereas this time Team New Zealand are further upwind than Ineos Team UK, and they're actually at least in the racecourse area. Ineos is still out of the racecourse area.
But what is good about this from a learning perspective and data perspective is that they're learning how quick they can get up onto those foils. They're learning probably more about the boat's ability at this point, are they not?
Well, minimum wind strengths in order to get the boat out of the water. And remember, it's all-purpose flaps they need. Here they go. They're slowly coming out, but these are all-purpose foils because they have to cover the whole gamut. They cannot dial in a set of foils for the day. They have to get a really good all-purpose set that works in light and works in a breeze.
So both boats doing around 10 knots, one heading upwind, one heading downwind. And, you know, it seems like after what we've watched the first 3 days of competition here so far, that they need about 17, 18 knots of boat speeds to get flying.
Nathan, I got a lot of comments yesterday. I think right now a spinnaker and a pole, old school spinnaker pole would be just about right on this boat.
Yeah, and then once it's foiling, the whole spinnaker will be flapping as the apparent wind comes right around the front.
The old knife douse.
Shirley, how does it look out there at the moment? It's looking pretty soft from our perspective.
Yeah, it's pretty soft, Nathan. I mean, Ineos have not foiled, I think, this entire leg. It was interesting coming around that mark. I think Pete Burling was looking behind at us. I hope we stay out of the way. Was that actually they could make their sails look like normal sails. They can like let them out, and I haven't seen that on any of the other boats. Also, we got a pretty good look at their foils. I mean, I had to understand it. The Kiwi foil is very small and very slim. The British have a massive foil, and you would have thought in these light conditions that you need a big surface area. You know, it's just not, something's not right on that with the British foil, and you know, it's hard to work out what.
Not only are the Kiwi foils maybe a little smaller, but they're actually asymmetric, meaning they're on one side of the boat, there's actually a different foil than the other side of the boat, and we might be able to get to that in a bit.
Ineos Team UK have finally made the top mark. Finally made the top mark, while Emirates Team New Zealand are attempting to get up onto their foils to complete this now shortened race of 4 legs.
Not a super happy looking team. That too much work, too much effort, too much time in the gym and on the boat, on systems. I feel horribly bad for this group right now.
We're talking high performance athletes here. One thing doesn't change. If it's not going well, you can be as strong and as smart as possible, but gee, it must knock them psychologically.
That's it. Tomorrow, like we said yesterday, you just circle the wagons tomorrow. You get your team inside those 4 walls, and we are all for each other, and ignore the noise outside the walls, and just let your smart people be smart. You got to still trust the process.
So bring on the siege mentality and do your thing.
You bet.
So both teams at the moment in this first sudden death semi-final of the PRADA America's Cup Christmas Race just trying so hard, edging themselves to get up on the foils.
So everyone must be thinking, why aren't they bringing up the old Code Zero? I know we've talked about this time and time again. The Code Zero is what, it's a hybrid spinnaker. It's a bigger sail that you'd put up that's bigger than the jib. And Ken, why none of these teams pulling him out from downstairs and hoisting him and getting up on the foil?
Okay, so I've been sitting here typing frantically to a couple of my sailmaking friends exactly the same question, and I'm confused. And you know, they're all worried about carrying extra weight and carrying drag and carrying windage, but what's worse than this? So why not carry it on board the boat and hoist it downwind right now and take off and take it down at the leeward mark if you need to? Some of these teams have practiced going upwind with the code zeros, and it can't be worse than this. So at some stage, we got to see somebody try it, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that today. But you know, these guys are smarter at this than I am. But
Jimmy Spittle was asked that question yesterday at the press conference, but he said there's a compromise.
He did say that. You know, that question came up yesterday. Why didn't someone put the zero up? And he said, well, honestly, once you're up and foiling and you're going upwind, you'd be a much slower boat with the code zero up. He said, yes, it helps you get on the foil. And yes, it's probably faster in a downwind situation like this than it would get you going. But the moment you start going upwind, it's draggy. You know, if you can foil upwind with a jib, you're always going to be faster than if you can foil upwind with the zero.
it's got to be faster than that.
Yep, and right now, you know, I was a little bit surprised if Ineos Team UK just didn't say, well, we'll take a gamble in this race and start with it, because if it does die, maybe they could be foiling with the zero up and Emirates Team New Zealand with the jib, you know, wouldn't, and they could be flying around right now.
If you're expecting to be in the water like this is not about, you know, the one thing that I keep thinking of, this is not about speed on a certain leg. This is about lap speed, right? So, okay, you're slower upwind with it, but I mean, these guys are just they're planning on being displacement now. They're not even trying to foil. They're just trying to get downwind. And
did you see Glenn Ashby standing at the front of the mast there? I remember back in, what was it, 2003 Cup, there were people up the mast.
That was in
looking for breeze,
1995,
right?
That was me.
Do you think we might see that on this downwind?
Oh, jeez. Do they have any spare? I don't think they have spare halyards, do they? You need a halyard to go up on.
You could just free climb.
You might be able to free climb.
Glenny Ashby's pretty small. I'm sure he could shimmy his way up to the spreaders.
Surely they're not even trying to foil right now, are they?
And I sailed a boat called the Yingling in the Olympics, and it did about this speed. This is not my speed. I mean, I'll jump in on the chat about the zero and the jibs. I mean, they have to make the decision 10 minutes out. Jimmy said that in the press conference. And they're very reliant on their meteorologists, you know, for actually actual, not forecasting, but for actual wind. And what wind are we going to see in the race? And when we started, and certainly 10 minutes out from the start, it was 9 knots. It was for sure a jib day. You have to make that decision then. Also, I think it's quite a hard process to put the zero on. As you say, they've got one halyard. They have to make that work, and it's just not something you can put up in a few minutes. But you know, a massive emphasis on the intel coming from the meteorologists, and you know, a massive trust on what they say they're going to be racing with.
Get in it. Forward's coming up. Master, you onto it. Oh, easy, man.
Plenty of hydraulic noise coming off Emirates Team New Zealand there, and some good chat. We'll just stay with him here and listen to what's going through the minds of them as they're drifting downwind at the moment, trying to search for this next puff.
A little more jib. Nice, Phils.
Showing a little more on us there, but I'm not sure if it's right.
Doesn't look visually right.
The question I have is this. You're sitting in the water. You're trying hard to wait for the wind to try and find something. What are you learning about your boat?
Not a lot right now. This is not what these boats were made for.
No, right now, if you're in the water and you know there's no chance of taking off, you're just learning that it's too light to race these boats is what you're learning. And if they had the code zeros up, they might be learning, okay, we can generate some power. But right now, you're probably trying to decide between, do we do 5 knots and aim at the bottom marks? Or do we just keep going from boundary to boundary at 90 degrees, trying to generate speed and some apparent wind and try and get it up and foiling?
A bit like what happened yesterday in race 12 of the World Series, where Peter Burling against Rossa, which, as Kenny described it, used the whole race course to finally get up with the foils.
Well, one thing that's interesting is Ineos might have found its condition right now. This sounds very sarcastic, but they've been quicker in displacement mode than New Zealand. Just saying. Too far? Too much?
Let's have a listen to Ben and see if they have the same opinion as you, Kenny.
You know that your start will be postponed. The new time will be advised after the finish of race 1.
Magic copy. Thanks, Bill.
Half here. It's rolling down in that.
You will never see competitor athletes ever quit, and this is the proof of it right here. That's the clue of the jib, one of the corners of the jib. That is made for tons of load. And to give you an idea how little wind there is, that's a human sitting on it and essentially trimming it with their body weight. So I think that's Parco. Yeah, that just gives you an idea.
It's just worth noting that these races do have a 45-minute limit. We've just gone past the 30-minute mark. We are of the understanding that the race number 2, the second sudden death semi-final between Rossa, Prada, Pirelli and American Magic will be delayed.
It's a very good point, because they're not even halfway down this run yet. And so
anything that breeze will go back
potentially,
right,
if they don't get up and falling, they might not make the time limit.
It's probably better to keep going this way, but
then we get to do it all over again.
So as you can see on the right-hand bottom side of your screen is the race time clock. We have a limit on every race of 45 minutes. When they're foiling and doing okay, they're normally coming at around 23, 25 minutes. Right now, we're into the 32nd minute of 45.
Speed's building again now. Starting to roll away now.
Oh, yep. Such a nice tip. Nice. Huh? I think we got ages. Unless it's 45 from the start, then we need to finish within 15 minutes from now.
Blair Tuke just nailed it.
All of that to get there, I think.
Blair Tuke having the same conversation as we are, and Blenny sitting to Lewis saying, I think we're going to need every single second of that.
Okay. Losing the head of the jib there, guys. Too deep. Too deep. Yeah, I reckon we're at 132, just about for that amount of air.
It
sounds like it might be better back the other way to me, but what do you guys reckon? Drive loss is pretty massive.
Saying 8.2 knots on the gauge here, but I don't know if that's correct.
8.2 knots of wind speed?
Yeah.
You'd expect him to be falling at 8.2 knots.
Doesn't heaps better the other way, eh?
No. They do look like they've got more pressure behind us, though. Gains to them at the moment.
So they've been heading downwind for about 14 minutes. They're not quite halfway. So at least another 14 minutes to go unless they get up in foiling, which has them just not quite making it. But all it takes is that breeze to come up 1 or 2 knots, and boats will go from 8 knots to 30 knots in a heartbeat. So it's a game of patience right now. I'm sure if you're at Ben Ainsley right now, you're hoping they don't make that time limit.
Exactly correct.
You get another chance to have a
The breeze is supposed to build, I think, as the day goes on, right? We are supposed to get a little more of a sea breeze in the later afternoon.
We are, but I think what we're seeing right now is we've got this light northeast sea breeze that's coming in through the islands to the
dragging that flat transom.
Auckland City and all the beaches along past Takapuna there. And on the west coast out near the airport, we've got a southwest sea breeze. And what we've got is them just fighting each other. And at some point between now and sunset, one of them's going to win. And we're out on course A, so we're hoping that the northeast is going to win.
You hear Ben just say, we're smoking here, boys.
3 knots faster,
yeah.
A little bit lower as well. Maybe there's less hull drag than we think.
For sure there's less transom drag. You know, that the low corners of the back 2 corners of the Kiwi boat is certainly pretty draggy, that big flat transom.
Good hull drag comparison.
That's what I was just talking about. Wow.
Let's do the same thing.
We're max displacement.
Which made up.
We're max displacement now, aren't we? The moment they punch through, they clear their flat transom.
Got a can bits knocking on the water like.
Surprised they're not. Maybe they think they're going to make it. They just carry on like this.
How much wind speed you got?
9, almost 10. Surprised they're not trying to go for it. Our boundary's turned off, but
this is
they've just gone into boundary there.
Oh, they're good. Yeah, they.
Fuck, we're going to pick them up here.
Look at the difference in the foil. The Kiwis have their foil half out of the water. The other guys are all the way in.
They're not across. No cross.
We're going to see
a dial up. Soak down the boundary there.
That's Ben and Giles having a chat about they're going to dial them down here on starboard.
This is like the good old days, boys.
Infringements on opposite
We'll have
laps?
a cup of tea and think about it. Oh, what are they going to do?
Have to stay about.
Well, they're setting up.
This is the voice still on Ineos. Having fun, maybe dialing them down.
How far are we from the zone here, Ben?
We're about 3 lengths off it.
Just note, bottom right of your screen,
Just
the
green
race
light's
time,
still on.
a 45-minute time limit on either of these races. We're currently in the 37th minute. And not foiling.
So we have a port starboard situation here, but the green light's flashing, so they are inside the boundary.
Struggling to pop
So right now, if the green light stays on, the advantage stays, or the right-of-way stays to Emirates Team New Zealand. Ben's got him lined up with that bright orange pole, but looks like he's going to take his transom.
Can't be one way to get rid of the defender.
Sink
boundary, boys.
After you, lads.
They went 40 in and out.
Giles waving him through.
After you, lads.
We're going to have to turn here.
In Formula One, they have a blue flag, don't they, when you're coming around to lap people?
Yes, correct.
So is the blue flag still out right
They
now?
have blue lights now. It used to be blue flags, and in Formula One it's a blue light, and you're allowed to, you've got to give one, get out of the way. But they're doing around 300 kilometers an hour plus.
So a lot of people at home probably wonder why Ineos, again, Nathan just explained about why did Ineos, who was on starboard tack, have to give way to the Kiwis? And it's because you are protected when you're inside that boundary. And the boundary, I believe, is 115 at this regatta. It actually got widened for this regatta. Within 115 meters of the course edge, you are protected as the port tack boat, and it's to try to help out the craziness that could happen right on the edge of the race course, especially right off the starting line.
I bet you the guy on that water cycle that we saw right at the pre-show would be loving to be sitting beside these guys right now.
He could be lapping both of these boats right now, couldn't he?
So Ken, if you were Ben Ainsley there, you can obviously take the transom and jibe past, but you know, they have an opportunity there maybe to jibe inside and take the wind out of the sails of Emirates Team New Zealand and slow them down to not make the time limit. I'm surprised they didn't do that.
Right. Do you think at this stage they're just ready to get it over with and get back in the shed tomorrow?
Just
be done with it.
Don't draw out the pain
exactly.
and just have it over and done with.
Again, we don't mean this in a derogatory way, but you can just look at the. You don't see a lot of joking and laughing on board and body language like we have if it's super serious at the moment.
Probably also feel like there's not much to learn right now, so sooner it's over, we can go home and start modifying the boat.
Yeah.
Emirates Team New Zealand bonding.
Tell you what, I'm glad I got the shorts on today. Yeah. Definitely be blowing a valve.
If it's we got only about 6 to 7 minutes. If it's 45 total. Right from the top, we obviously got whatever the first beat.
That's a great look at the foils, isn't it?
The near straight line of Emirates Team New Zealand, and then the antedral of the Brits. That just shows that little shape difference, but there's all kinds of different things going on right now. How big the trim tabs are on each, how big that front foil section is on each.
I reflect on what you said yesterday, Kenny, about the British foils and water streaming out of them. And I would have thought if you got water streaming out of your foil, that's drag.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the thickness difference right in here between the two. The fairing thickness. Wow, it's interesting. Nathan, we've talked about this triangular shape compared to the others who are a little straighter, but also how big this appears to be the front section of the foil here. And then there's a very large trim tab on the back end. So it looks like the percentage of trim tab to the overall foil is more than 50-50. That's interesting in its own right.
It is quite different to the other designs that the other teams have taken, in that they've had a much larger foil section with a much smaller flap or a much smaller trim tab. You know, you get the majority of your lift from that front part of the foil, and then the flap is really like you see on an aeroplane. It should be a much smaller percentage. Well, generally it is, and that's one of the obvious differences that we've been able to pick up so far between the foils. Is the flap size on Ineos Team UK seems to be a lot bigger, and they've got that more like triangle shaped foil as opposed to a long, skinny, you know, high aspect foil.
Try and wait as late as possible for it.
Got your cups, it's coming up.
Come sheet on, please, guys.
We're in the 42nd minute of a maximum 45-minute race. And it's a little way to the finish line because this is the last leg. Reminding you, though, that Ineos Team UK have been lapped. They made it to the top of the first leg. Essentially, they're on the second leg.
Look at the water pouring out again. See the water pouring out of that back end, and kind of really interesting, kind of an inverted shape here along the back edge of that trim tab. I can't take total credit for this, by the way. My friend Juan Kumajan, Juan K, as the rest of the world knows it. I was talking to him this morning, and he was the one that talked about possibility. Like he said, there's no science to what I am saying. I am on my couch at home like everybody else. There also could be, we could be not seeing that dotted line there. That's obviously something that they're trying to test the flow off of the foil.
Yeah, we're assuming that's where the hinge is.
Yeah, exactly. So
it
that's
might
my
not
point.
Be there at all.
That's my point.
And
that could be.
You know, and no one's. You know, we're never going to get a verification there, but it does look like there is a distinct line right there, and it may be at best it's 50-50, 50% flat, 50% front of the foil. But if we look at Emirates Team New Zealand's foil, I bet you they've got a much smaller flap than that, and there's a lot going on. It's the top surface of the foil looking from the onboard camera on the mast. much smoother on this side, but the hinge I think you'll find is underneath, and then that's the foil tip there.
Tantalizingly close to the finish line. We're in the 44th minute. A little over 1 minute 30 before time runs out.
Shades of San Francisco.
1 minute pace.
In San Francisco, Emirates Team New Zealand were very close to winning that America's Cup, and time limit prevented them from winning that overall series. We know this is just the Christmas regatta, maybe not as much on the line, but for all you Kiwi fans out there watching on TV or on the water, it's a very similar situation today. Racing the clock.
Coming up on 1 minute. If you're a betting man right now, Stephen, what are you thinking? You've seen a lot of car races. Are you a horse race man? No.
Not a horse race guy. Love the car racing, and they go a little bit quicker than this one. And normally they'd have crossed the finish line probably 3 to 4 laps ago because of the speeds, but they're in the 45th minute. We are still waiting on how this one will be decided, because we do know that Emirates Team New Zealand have lapped them. If it was a tie, it would go on who was the fastest.
By the way, not a chance they're finishing this race on time.
You think?
Not a chance.
30 seconds to go. They're about a minute away.
Great observation, Kenny.
Yeah, that's why I won't say it. Not a chance.
Early drive, daylight might cost them.
They are just going to miss the finish line. Here comes the time limit expiration of 45 minutes.
Great station there, boys. Great station, please.
There it is.
I got flat. Come a little canoe on me.
Race yachts, race yachts. This is the race committee. We have reached the time limit and will be terminating this race. We plan to resail this race after race 2. Stand by for further information.
So the intention is to resail the race after race number 2, which is between Luna Rossa, Prada, Pirelli and American Magic. We do know there has been a delay in that race as well. We heard Dean Barker on comms quite happy with that decision, actually, knowing what is going on here. Not a heck of a lot of wind about. The start looked okay for Emirates Team New Zealand, and as Shirley had quite rightly said before, Ineos Team UK didn't spend too much time on the fours. They got and onto the start line and then basically down and splash.
This one was quickly over, wasn't it? I think they say never in doubt, but it's all for naught. We've got to do it all over again at some stage here. Let's just hope the breeze comes up.
They're like 20 meters from the finish. It's like, come on, give me a break.
Best information to come out of that race was Glenn Ashby saying he was glad he wore his shorts today rather than his long trousers. That was the best.
Sub 7 knot race.
So Shirley, on the water, it's obviously gotten a lot wider. What can you see out there at the moment?
Oh, Nathan, I think we might have to be quite patient. It's tricky. When you live here, you know it's tricky that the thermal wind here, I mean, particularly the North Island here is a narrow strip of land in a massive ocean. So, you know, there is a bit of heating off the land, but, you know, there's 2 coastlines and, you know, not a great deal of land to heat up. So it's going to be a hard day. You know, the other coastline, it's you know, southwesterly wind here. It's very light northeasterly. I don't know what to say.
Thank you, Shirley.
I'm not sure. I think we might have to wait for a little bit.
Let's go on board Emirates Team New Zealand. Blair, that looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, to begin with, it was all good, but yeah, it dropped off the wind right at the last top gate, and you know, unfortunately, we had to low ride the whole last downwind and finish 100 meters before the time limit. So yeah, a bit gutted not to finish it off, but some good lessons all in all.
Hey, Blair, I've never heard this. We were listening a lot to the conversations on board. Some of it you may be proud of and others you may not. The one comment that had me intrigued was actually asking if you should jibe on an upwind leg rather than tack to try to stay up on the foils. Is that something that you guys have actually done before, or were you just kind of winging it at the time?
Just winging it like normal, but no, we just, you know, we haven't really raced these boats very much, and we arrived at that top left-hand side, the ley line, and we knew it was going to be really marginal to tack, and we knew we were coming down for the last run, so I just sort of threw it out there whether that was an option, but yeah, we went for the tack, didn't quite pull it off, and then, yeah, just maybe we should have tried to low ride right from the beginning. We sort of probably wasted 5 minutes at the top there trying to get going. But that's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, it's a bit annoying that the wind's dropped off slightly earlier than forecast, but yeah, we'll wait and see what happens now.
Hey Blair, it's Nathan Atteridge here. Just looking at the conditions out there, it looks pretty soft. What's the weather information you're getting from your guys? Do you think this light northeast is going to hold, or are we going to see west coast sea breeze push in?
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty challenging for us now, unfortunately. You can kind of see this cloud line above us, which on the other side of it's a southwesterly sea breeze pushing through from the west coast, and we've just got the rest left over nor'easter here. So yeah, the cloud's probably pushed out a little bit too far, and you know, it's not that encouraging that we're already on the drop here. So it's a bit of a shame since we came so close to completing one race there.
Thanks, Blair. Appreciate the time. Look forward to the resale.
Thank you.
On to Ineos Team UK now, Ben Ainsley. So, Ben, looking forward to that cup of tea?
It's one of those days. It's obviously a little bit light out here. It's a bit of a struggle, and suddenly a struggle for us up that first upwind leg. So we're just trying some different ideas to get the boat going, yeah, it's tough. I mean, the only fun part for us was probably the displacement race back downwind with the Kiwis, and yeah, a bit of old school sailing.
Ben, have you ever considered I'm sure you have, I'm sure you talked about putting a code 0, even bringing a code 0 on board if you know the breeze is going to drop out, bringing a code 0 to put it up on a run, or is that completely out of the question?
No, it's definitely not out of the question, but you know, to be honest with you, we've got some other issues at the moment. The code 0 actually probably wouldn't help us that much, but it might down the road if we can work out what's going on with our foils.
Yeah, Ben, Nathan Atteridge here. Looks like it's definitely getting light and shutting down there. It was nice to hear you guys having a good chat downwind and trying to keep the morale for this team going. We know that today's tough for you, but no. Lot coming in a few weeks for you guys, and just give us an insight to what you got planned and what you really want to get the team to focus on between now and January.
Yeah, that's right, Nate. We've got the next couple of weeks of make or break for us, really, in terms of getting this boat going and getting it close to its performance. You know, for a couple of reasons, it's a long way off that. So yeah, we've got to spend the next 2-3 weeks bringing some new hardware onto the boat, and also making some changes to how we sail the boat. So big couple of weeks, huh?
Appreciate the time, Ben. Go get the billy on. There's still a race to go.
Well, unfortunately, this race doesn't have a whole lot of highlights. We might call them lowlights, but it was kind of over at the start. The Ineos had a hard time making the line on starboard tack, and again, it's such a challenge in this light air to know how to get up. We actually noticed before the race start that Ineos towed to get up on their foils, so they knew right away that they were going to be struggling to pop this boat out of the water. You heard him mention, Nathan, it was interesting, twice in that statement about foil. I think they're focusing on foils coming up here, because when one boat's doing this and the other boat's sitting there in the water, sounded to me like Ben thinks this is about foils more than anything else.
Yeah, 100%. That's what they've got their mind focused on. If your foils aren't giving you the lift you need to keep the boat in the air, then you are definitely going to be struggling. As we see here, Emirates Team New Zealand didn't have any issues at all foiling throughout that entire first race. You can see again, big difference between these two boats and their performance, and the lighter wins. Ineos Team UK, he's stuck in the water. But the thing that really stood out for me the most in this race was Peter Burling's start. He nailed the start. He did a very good job back at that start. And that's probably their biggest achievement so far, is that's what we want to focus on today, is the starting. They knew they were going to slowly sail away from Ben in this race, but I bet you they never thought they were going to be drifting down this final run.
Yeah, big old nylon asymmetrical Jenniker would have gotten them there on time. Old school. I'm sure you've never used one of those, Nathan. The rest of the sailing world
I've used them
has.
a few times before.
You have? Nice job.
Yeah.
Way to do it. They knew they were going to be in displacement mode. One thing Blair Took said, maybe they should have stopped trying to foil earlier and take a look at that overall time limit and go into displacement mode earlier on. He thinks they wasted about 5 minutes reaching back and forth trying to get back up on the foils. Key moment, very clearly the starting line, and they were both late. Remember, both boats were late, but no question Peter Burling had his boat in a better position. Ineos had to tack to make the line. Must have been a big left-hand shift because both boats were probably a little narrow on that starboard tack, and then off the foils on this tack for the Brits, never to get back up on them again.
Yeah, you can see here both boats are low in the box. We can see that ley line. Team New Zealand are bang on the ley line to the pin end. I've definitely been giving Peter Burling a hard time trying to get his starts right, and that one was textbook.
Spectator fleet on a Sunday afternoon in Auckland City. Your summer is calling in the summer of 2020-2021. And just confirmation too that race 2 between Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli and American Magic at this point has been postponed. And it is quite obvious that we are struggling for wind today. But there are many, many vantage points around on this course A on Auckland's North Shore, and folks are making the most of it. That's the America's Cup Race Village. People sitting in the sunshine, hoping they do what we like to say down here, slip, slop and slap. Get that sun protection on. As well, there's plenty of wind for those flags, isn't it? They're having to wave it.
Let's go sail the race in there.
Yeah, that looks okay. You know, the America's Cup has always been a design competition as much as there's a race on the water. Now, last to reveal their race boat was Te Rehotai. That was from Emirates Team New Zealand.
What is this wind that comes from far? It's a wind of change that will settle among our people. When that day does come, we will stand our po for Kainoa, onto the Waitemata, to bring us all together as one people.
You look back at this year and it's a pretty incredible effort by the build team to actually get the boat out at this point. Effectively we had to stop production for 5 weeks like everyone else in the country, and it's been a real effort for them between that stage and now, working kind of 24-hour shifts to really actually get the boat out now, so we've got enough time to develop it and be ready to race.
We're really proud of where it's got to. The challenges have put some good boats on the water. They've been big step on from their boat 1. But we're confident where we've landed here, and now it's into the final 4 months to try and keep eking as much speed out of it as we can.
I named this boat Te Rehotai. May God bless her and all who sail on her.
water now, you just look at it and you go, it's a spaceship, it's not a boat. You know, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you know, when this thing goes in the water over the next few weeks of commissioning and sailing. It's a super exciting time. I just can't wait to get out there.
They look like they're revolution more than evolution, but they're actually not. Each piece of boat 1 is being developed into boat 2.
We had not a huge amount of time to design boat 1. Then all the time that boat 1 was being built, we were working on the design of this boat. And then we had a little bit of time whilst boat 1 was sailing to sort of carry on the design. Had far more R&D go into this boat than the first boat. And we sort of started with a clean sheet of paper again. Once we're up and foiling, then it's all about the aerodynamics. So we focused very much on what's the optimum aerodynamic shape for a boat, and then thought, how do we package that shape into something that can float and take off.
Everybody's got their view of what it should be in terms of the rule and where you should place your boat, and in the end, none of us know. We're comfortable where we are, but we haven't gone sailing yet.
We're going to be pushing this boat into places that have never been pushed before, so you know, we want it to be a good learning experience, and we want to be able to turn up on the start line in March next year with the best possible package we can come up with.
We've got to figure out how to sail on the water and keep pushing on. There's a huge amount of development needed if we're going to win in March, so we need to keep pushing hard over the next 4 months, but we're certainly happy with where we're at the moment.
We're super excited to get out there. You know, it's something we haven't sailed for 5 weeks now in these boats, and we're watching all the challenges buzzing around the harbour, so you know, it's going to be pretty exciting now.
What a sight it makes. A summer's afternoon as we head towards Christmas 2020 and the Waitemata Harbour, the spectator fleet ringing course number A as we look across certain parts of Auckland, and gee, it really is a special sight. This home to the PRADA 36th America's Cup, the match of course starting March 6, 2021. And that's Auckland's North Shore. Spent a bit of time out there, I'm sure you have, Nathan.
Plenty of time sailing up and down this coastline, well, foiling to be honest, but I wouldn't go out there on a day like today. It's pretty light. I'd probably prefer to be at the beach having a picnic.
Just confirming for you that race 2 in this America's Cup Christmas race has been postponed. We're still waiting an update. It'll be sheerly determined on the weather, and folks, that's what you do on the beach. You get the brolly out, have the kids out running around the sand and making sand castles. But the one thing we do know about this America's Cup, not those boats, the AC75s, Kenny, is that, as Ben Aisley said, it's all about foils, man.
It's all about the foils. The foils above the water and foils, as we're going to talk about, below the water. And there is really clear differences, and we're going to come up with the obvious here, first of all. The obvious is the dihedral or straight or ahedral, and that is a straight foil there, and then what we were originally referring to is Y foils on all of the other boats. So Team New Zealand is very clearly the one boat that has broken out of this Y-shaped foil. Why? Well, there's all kinds of reasons, and Nathan's going to get into the rule here in a second and how all these foils have to fit within a so-called box. If we go to the other side, one thing to look at right now is there is a clear bullet shape on the Team New Zealand, and if we switch to the other tack, which we might be able to do, you see almost like a flat, almost like a duck bill on this side. These guys are running two separate different foils on one side and the other. Why would they do that? They're testing. They're trying to figure out which foil is better in what condition, which foil makes them more stable, which foil makes them faster in what condition. Now, they haven't seen a lot of breeze in this event so far, so this is going to be a lot of light air testing and effective testing, most likely.
So here's the rule that the teams have to work with. You can see that the most important bit, I guess, is the bottom. You've got a 4-metre span across the bottom, but that box there is where the teams can put the foil. So that's your Team New Zealand foil. It's straight, and this is what all the other teams have gone for, the Y foil. You look down, you can make it quite a big, large span. You can make it tapered. You could sweep it back. That's more like the Ineos foil with a swept back foil. And then you can put a bulb in here if you wanted to too, which is where you can put the lead. You know, these foils have got to be a certain weight. There's got to be all different features here. And so if you put the lead in there, this looked like, you know, there's so many different versions of foils that they can do here. They've got the little wing tips on the outside. So we can talk and analyze this for ages, but that's the box that they have to, the room they have to operate in.
Auckland Harbour Bridge on a sunny Sunday afternoon. We are still waiting on racing for race number 2 between Rossa, Prada, Pirelli and American Magic. It has been postponed. We are waiting from the race committee on an update as when that can start. Sailors can be a superstitious bunch, you know. So when the Italians christened their race boat, Max Serena took no chances. There was no cotton wool or bubble wrap. The instruction to his wife were quite clear. You must smash the bottle.
Since boat one, I think we learned a lot and we keep together as a team and stick to what we thought it was the best in terms of design, engineering. It's a beautiful boat, you know, has been very well built. You know, these boats you have to really, they're very, very light. So in terms of structure, also the structural design.
I'm pleased to be here today. We're actually living in a strange bubble here in New Zealand, no? Because it doesn't look like nothing happened here in the last few months. So we're pleased to be here. It's been a challenging cup. Every month was something new coming up. The full design, arm design, process of the construction. No, it's been pretty challenging.
We pushed a lot in boat one. We have some breakages, and that's important at the end, you know, because you know the limits, you understand the boat. And I think that in terms of design, engineering and building, I think we are very happy with the outcome.
Very, very sophisticated boats and a lot more than where we were in Bermuda and even San Francisco. So, yeah, they're weapons, these things.
Io ti battezzo Luna Rossa!
A new generation of boats, completely different with what you've seen before, and such a big breakthrough in terms of design. Everybody at the beginning, when you put this concept on the paper and everybody saw the rule, everybody thought, well, maybe it's crazy, this is not going to work, but it's very cool for everybody, and everybody is really anxious to see it out there, racing against each other, you know, and I think it's going to be great.
You know, to be in the running, you got to have a boat upright at the end of the race as well. So these boats are on the edge. You know, the harder you push, the faster you go. It really does sort of blow your mind when you see the speeds. Like when you're on a power boat, actually trying to keep up with one of these things, then you get a real understanding. When you're on the boat, you kind of take it for granted a little bit. It's efficient, it's fun, and it's it's fast. And I think that's what people are interested in.
Okay, Pietro. Okay, stand by John, boys. You can spot us on Pietro.
Well, personally for me, I've been involved in 7 campaigns. I've been involved with the Trimaran, with Oracle, with the 72, last Cup with the AC50. And this one is the most exciting, incredible boat I never worked with.
Okay, Pietro, stand by. Bearing away.
So now we start to be real. Obviously, our goal is to really try to win the Cup. We will do everything we can. It's going to be really intense.
Rangitoto, an iconic landmark in Auckland. Hard to believe it's actually the last and youngest of the volcanic cones in this area. There's something between 47 and 50 volcanic cones in the Auckland region, and this was the last one that came up about 600 years ago. The really wonderful thing, if you ever get the chance to come down under, as you can walk up this magnificent volcanic cone, and it's about a 25-minute ferry ride from the downtown terminal, and then you can get up there and stretch the legs and get some oxygen into the blood. It really does make a beautiful sight on this glorious Sunday afternoon of the very first America's Cup Christmas race. And there is the spectator fleet waiting like you and I are, the whole team, for some more wind to get up so we can have race number 2. Race 1 has been said that it'll be resailed, despite the fact that Emirates Team New Zealand did lap Ineos Team UK. And we're waiting for Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli and American Magic. Plenty of fans out enjoying the summer of 2020 as we head into towards 2021, 5 days away from Christmas Day. Kenny Reid, Nathan Outeridge, it's just a simple wait and see right now.
Well, Stephen, unfortunately, as sailors, we've all seen this movie before. The breeze is something that is a blessing and a curse for all of us, and unfortunately in this amphitheater that we play in, there's sometimes days like this. But the good news is there is a sea breeze coming from the other side of the island right now. Let's see if it gets out there. That's the big question, right, Nathan? Is if the southwesterly sea breeze can make it across and kind of force this one away.
Yeah, it's a very common situation throughout the New Zealand and Auckland summer, particularly considering Auckland is so narrow. You've got West Coast, East Coast so close together, and the northeast breeze generally kicks the day off with that light sort of sea breeze which we had today, 6-8 knots, and then as the land heats up, that southwest breeze sucks in and generally blows this back out to sea. And you know, sometimes around 6 p.m. at night we get the southwest come across the course, so it could come anywhere between 4 o'clock and 6 o'clock today. And the question is it going to reach its way out to course A? And you know, are we able to turn this race course around a 180 and start the race, or is the northeast going to push back in again?
So just confirming where we're at. Resale of race 1 at some stage today. Weather gods saying yes, and a postponement still on race number 2 between Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli and American Magic. The AC-75 is a revolutionary flying yacht, and it's set to take the old mug into a completely new realm. The design and build phase took more than 100,000, that's right, 100,000 man-hours. First to launch their race boat was the New York Yacht Club's American Magic.
Today marks a great day in our program and really part of just the natural progression of any America's Cup team. And I think for our team in particular, it's a culmination of roughly 80,000 man-hours of work into Boat 2 and the design and build of that boat. A great moment for the production team and for the design team.
The design team, has given us a piece of equipment that, not only fits the rule but can get us around the racetrack very quickly, and my job is just to try and make it work within its optimum.
The development that's taking place since Boat 1 was launched has been huge, not just in terms of design, but also in learning how to sail the boats and learning how the attitude of the boat in the water is optimized for maximum performance. Our first boat's been great. Now we need to make sure that this boat gets to the America's Cup.
I think having done so much time on Defiant, it's all going to put us in good stead to get out there and get sailing the boat pretty quickly and in a good manner. So we're looking forward to that.
The bow shape and the whole boat is just maximizing driving force, and minimizing the healing moments that you're producing,
I christen thee Patriot. May God bless this yacht and all who sail her.
feels like there's just been hurdle after hurdle of things on the outside completely out of our control, and I'm always impressed by the level of just commitment that everybody shows to just keep working and keep doing our jobs, and the rest will take care of itself.
With the style of racing, with the race course being confined, I think it will keep the boats close together. With the class, it's very much a development class. Someone's going to be fast. You hope that's going to be yourselves.
The difference between the mule and birch boat here is enormous, and we had to learn how to do it along the way. So if we can continue to learn on that steep part of the learning curve, you know, with this platform, we're going to be in competitive shape come race time.
It's great to be in Auckland, where we have to race and we have to develop and really get ourselves on form for the match. You know, we've kind of followed our own path here. We were the first to do the mule. We were first foiling in an AC 75. Now, if it's not fast, it probably doesn't really mean anything other than you're good at sticking to the calendar and the deadlines that you set. So we're going to make sure it's fast.
From now on, it's just a matter of taking the boat to its full potential, which is not an easy thing to do. We're confident that we've done a good job. We've dedicated a lot of effort. This is the boat that should win the America's Cup.
The New Zealand flag flying high across Auckland's Harbour Bridge. There is wind, and that's what we are looking for on the last day of this pre-Prada Cup regatta. This is a single-day regatta. This is the Prada America's Cup Christmas Race. We've had the 3 days of the World Series won by Emirates Team New Zealand. That is the Auckland Museum. Magnificent place. And that is the Waitemata Harbour. It really is a jewel on a sunny summer's day like this. We are still waiting for race number 2, the sudden death semi-final in this Christmas race between Rossa Prada Pirelli team and American Magic, representing the New York Yacht Club. And while we're waiting and pausing, Kenny, you of course know all about the New York Yacht Club. The desire and the hunger to try and wrest the old mug off Emirates Team New Zealand to get to that Prada Cup final, hopefully to win the Prada Cup, must be enormous. And we sometimes don't talk about the pressure that might be on Terry Hutchinson to actually get out there and do it from the old guard.
Well, the old guard of the New York Yacht Club, the last America's Cup I did was for the New York Yacht Club in 2003, and we listen, the New York Yacht Club is a major resource. Obviously, its passion about the sport of sailing, its understanding about the high end, and its understanding of what the America's Cup is, of the tradition, of the history. So to sail for the New York Yacht Club is not just sailing a boat race. It's about, you know, it's about everything. It's about everything there is to do with this sport. Past Commodore Phil Lotz and his wife Wendy are here on their boat, and they've been kind of the liaison between the sailing team and the yacht club, and they're constantly. I think it's a fine line of being overly involved, but putting enough information and emphasis into it, and staying on board and helping out where you can. So it's an interesting. I imagine it's an interesting spot for the yacht club.
When you were racing for them, did you feel this undercurrent of pressure to deliver?
There was never an undercurrent of pressure. Our boss, Mr. Connor, did plenty of that on his own, so I didn't need any help from anybody else. But it was very funny how you would get people who have been sailing for a long time, and I would get a email or a text message saying, the shape of the bulb in your keel is all wrong, or you gotta change the rudder, or why aren't you raking the mast back more? So there are very good armchair sailors within the New York Yacht Club. There's very good armchair sailors around the world in every yacht club, I might add. Hence all the texts we get from how to do a TV show, for example. It's not different. You know, it's just love and passion for the sport in any yacht club who's supporting any of these 4 teams, and New York Yacht Club's no different.
So let's flip it the other way. Still a privilege to race for the New York Yacht Club.
Oh, an honor, absolutely. You just have to walk into the clubhouse, as Terry's taken us through. One of the highlight features is you just got to walk into the yacht club on 44th Street in New York City, and the amazing place up in Newport Harbor Court. And you just feel it. It's part of the energy, it's part of the ambiance, it's part of, you just feel like you're walking into a museum. And these are phenomenal places and phenomenal leadership and really good people.
So just some thoughts from Kenny Reid, one of my expert friends beside me, the other one being foiling guru in Nathan Outeridge. As we wait for racing, right now we do not have an official start time for race team between American Magic and Luna Rossa. As we know, Super Ainsley wants to take the America's Cup back to the UK. They've endured 170 years of hurt. Their hopes and dreams rest with the beautifully named Britannia. The message from billionaire backer Sir Jim Ratcliffe at the christening ceremony was quite clear. Britannia must rule the waves.
It's been a long time going through the transition, getting here to New Zealand, going through the quarantine process, getting everything set up. So excited to get out on the water and then pretty quickly start lining up with the competition and see how we go pace-wise.
Probably shouldn't compare these things to your children, but you know, it's a big day because a year ago we set this launch date, and so there's an awful lot that happens in a year. And yet at the same time you kind of know this is really the start of a journey, so just keep on pushing.
There was a bit of conflict in the team about how hard we were going to push this concept. Ultimately, we pushed pretty hard.
I'm biased, so I think it's the best looking boat I've ever seen and looks like a rocket. Hopefully it sails like a rocket, and you know, it's going to need to beat these other teams and to beat the Kiwis on home waters.
Early on with Boat 1, we were missing a few cards in terms of racecourse area, size of the racecourse, wind limits and so on. Some boats are hard to kind of get off the page in production because you know there's things nagging you. Some boats actually come quite easily, and this is one of the kind of three performance aspects we were really focused on at the time. All seem to kind of mesh well in this form.
And be in no doubt, this boat will fly.
We're pushing with a lot of decisions, both with the foils and with the hull itself. Even the cockpit layout of this boat's pretty radical. We're on the ragged edge of technology. In other words, we're pushing to do stuff that we haven't really done before, and sometimes we don't always have mature tools to actually make a decision. So you've got to take a bit of a leap of faith with some of these decisions.
Luck is preparation looking for an opportunity, and certainly as a team we subscribe to that. You've got to be methodical about your preparation. Again, in a technical sport, reliability is huge. So we need all of that, and then at the end of the day we've got to get out there on the race course and get it right there.
2, 1, down.
This cup, because we're in this new class of boat and such a radical thing, falling monohull like this, I think the people that take the risks and then manage those risks are probably going to end up winning.
I think they will make for fantastic racing when we come around to the Cup. You know, there will be differences in performance between the teams, but they're all very, very skilled teams. So by the time we get round to that racing, we expect some fantastic competition.
Not having met before at this point in time just kind of sharpens that intrigue, so it's going to be an interesting couple of months.
The interesting thing about the America's Cup is it started in England around the Isle of Wight 170 years ago. We've never won it. So that's the challenge for us, is to try and get that cup back home.
All is quiet on the Waitemata Harbour. That's Ineos Team UK. Their race, we hope, against Emirates Team New Zealand will be resailed, but we still have to get through race number 2, the sudden death semi-final between American Magic and Luna Rossa. But we still do not have a confirmation. We are hearing a suggestion that they may move the course to course C. In other words, the race management are going to be trying to chase some wind. In the meantime, we will give you some racing, but it will come from yesterday, and it was the last race of the PRADA America's Cup World Series. It was a must-win for Emirates Team New Zealand, and they're up against the challenger of record in Luna Rossa. Port entry will be Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli.
That's good.
And I think they're in. And keep in mind, Stephen, if Prada wins this race, there is a three-way tie, an unbreakable three-way tie for first place. And the seeding for tomorrow is actually pulled out of a hat because there is literally no way to break it. So this is a big race for a lot of reasons.
So just a reminder, if you are joining us for this Emirates Team New Zealand race against Rossa, Prada, Pirelli, we didn't see a finish at all in race number 11 by Ineos Team UK. And you heard Benazi say, we're done.
I think they have a DNF. I think we didn't hear an official, but it sure looked like it to me.
Pre-start here, 1 minute 15. Look how far apart these two boats are. They're just staying apart. I think they've realised the wind is getting lighter and the priority is staying on the foil, because if they fall off in the pre-start,
no question about it,
they are going to be playing catch-up. So
make sure you
right
cannot
now,
cross, because
the advantage is with Luna Rossa because they only have to do the 1 maneuver. Team New Zealand still have one more tack to go.
A little bit more now, 10 degrees speed bias.
But there is no question that they're staying away from each other because the race ends if they come off the foils, most likely in this pre-start.
And they're starting with both boards down. They're probably a bit early on the way back. New Zealand have their board up here.
Here comes the port starboard to dial up, and Team New Zealand will tack in below, and then we'll just see time and distance.
Yours, Andy, man? Yeah. Good angle,
20 seconds to start of race 12. It will be 6 legs. 6 legs of this course. It was shifted earlier today to more northerly to catch the wind.
Big lefty, you heard them say. They might not even make this pin end of the starting line. I think Emirates Team New Zealand's bearing off, and they're going to attack and go behind. Here comes a dial down. Watch this. Jimmy Spithill's going to hunt right at him and not let them tap. There he goes, back up and start the race. So well done by Spitthill there. That was so classic.
Can I keep saying it? Peter Burling is not in any way at all nailing any of these stuff. He's putting himself in bad positions and letting the challengers just dominate him.
Does this come down to coming up against seasoned match races?
It's more, maybe it's just more of a match race than they thought. You know, the other people on these other boats have a lot more, quote, match racing experience. Yes, this is a match race, and he won the America's Cup before in a match race. But this is a different animal. This is a little more like the match racing in the monohulls that we've seen in the past, especially in the pre-start.
Emirates Team New Zealand picking up some speed. They've found some wind.
Happy to start coming out.
So we've been talking all week about the speed of Emirates Team New Zealand, and they've been using boat speed to win races. You know,
starting to wind up now.
Not really dominating the starts, but their boat speed's quick, the manoeuvring's going very well, and it's an opportunity here now to see if that speed is real, or if Luna Rossa actually do have the speed and the lightning, which we suspect, and can keep control in this race.
But again, Nathan, this is it for them, right? They have one more day of actual competing against another AC-75 before they go off on their own again. I remember in my match race days, you just go find another pair of boats and you match race and match race and match race and try to make it second nature. Peter Burling doesn't have that capability to do it. They have no second boat to go race against, and I'll tell you what, none of those challenges are going to help out the defender. Never do, never have, never will.
Showing 5 degrees lefty, but I think it's tacking with this a bit, so just go for pressure.
Yeah, reasonable pressure out this side of the boundary tag. Copy, boundary tag. Copy.
Going slowly forward on the steer,
Let's just stay within here.
How's your balance? Sorry, Peter, a bit wobbly there. How's your balance? You right? Just enough.
So let's just take a quick look back at the start.
20 seconds. 20.
So Emirates Team New Zealand comes back early in a big left-hand shift and decide that they're going to have to tack. So what happened is Jimmy Spithill pointed the bow down at them. Watch this. Jimmy Spithill points the bow down at them to make sure that they can't tack right away and have a good start. And as soon as he comes up to lay line to the starboard end, he slowly comes up and rolls into attack. For a second reason is because when he comes out of the tack, he's going to be right on their air coming out of, you know, just textbook. Perfect. Textbook. Very vulnerable spot. Sorry, Stephen. Very vulnerable spot that Burling approached the starting line from. And that's what he has to improve, is get himself in more of a commanding position. That was both races today, very vulnerable coming back to the starting line.
It's a lot better now.
Okay, for the race, boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Pressure. Left. Safer left.
Yeah, copy that, Gillo. I think we will try to do one and in, but no guarantee.
The voice of Francesco Bruni.
He's definitely two and in to the right. Yeah. So we may do that.
Yes.
Fantastic. Discussion of the geometry of the race course and how many maneuvers they're going to have to do.
Go for it.
Oh, isn't it so good when they just do our job for us? And it's so insightful. Let's just stay with this as long as we can.
Copy. Remember the little charge for the tack.
Yep.
Okay, good numbers here.
He's tack.
18 knots.
That is the top gate. And this is race 12.
So you notice they didn't tack on top of Emirates Team New Zealand because they're trying to do this in one maneuver and force Emirates Team New Zealand to do it in two. The only danger is the split.
Emirates Team New Zealand want this race win. They need this race win. 2 wins gives them the PRADA America's Cup World Series.
Getting lighter.
Touchdown. Touchdown, PRADA, is it?
No, they're okay, but it is getting lighter.
Okay, my trap, beer trap.
Definitely more
That's the last feeling you want to have as a sailor. You're just so sticky there.
Did you hear Jimmy just say? So Jimmy Spithill is the driver on the starboard side. His head is, there he is. He said right after that tack, he's controlling the traveler.
Still too slow.
I think he has to take the traveller in a straight line, and I think Pietro Sabello behind him is doing main sheet and controls Cunningham.
Jimmy, I have a lot of flex.
But I think that knob right there, the
travel it out.
motorcycle grip is traveling. Yeah. Looks like they may not be laying either.
Stand by, okay, trimming up now.
So despite an almost touchdown, Nathan, the lead is comfortable at this point.
It's a one touchdown comfortable though. That's it, right?
Dean Barker found that out, and that was a 1 touchdown uncomfortable. That cost him the race.
That's a nice tack, just a little touch, and they're extending up this upward. Extending to 240 meters.
Let it go count to 15, 16. I think the main reason was too much pitch, okay? So we have to be very careful on the build.
Okay, guys, about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli, round the gate first, the top gate, leg 1 of 6 completed. The lead sitting around 243 meters. How far behind are Emirates Team New Zealand?
We have good speed. Stand by jive, boys. Wait. Listen. Stand by. 3.
Copy. A little more. Back there. Coming down 3, 2, 1. Coming down
There's
now.
a touchdown, just pinching to get around the mark right there and getting super slow.
Yeah, they underlaid that top mark, and I think Pete said we just got to try because the tack was going to be too much distance and falling off the foils. And look at that, Luna Rossa Prada made that jibe. That's probably the most important part now, is that they can make the jibe stick and just get down a track where it seems to be windier at the bottom. They could be going. Shirley, you're on the water. How's it looking out there?
Well, you spotted it is getting, you know, softer and softer all the time. We're right beside Emirates Team New Zealand. You know, that was a hard call, wasn't it? I mean, I think we would all probably have done the same. Just short of that mark and really paying the price. And all the time, Luna Rossa just extending away. To me, they look like they have slightly more power. You know, they touch down, but it's not so costly as when the Kiwis are touching down. And currently, they're just sailing away.
Try and come up to it, Pete.
Interesting that Emirates Team New Zealand there, Nathan, decided to try not to build on port. We saw Ineos try to build near the side boundaries and actually get a penalty out there that time. So they just immediately jibe back, and they're trying to build toward the middle of the race course in a painful way, as you could see on the faces of Emirates Team New Zealand fans. It's not that bad, folks.
Yep. But it's not getting that much better at the moment, is it? Luna Rossa jibe,
and are they down?
Off the foils. So it's a takeoff competition now. Who can get the thing up and foiling again? Man, you know, it's an 800-meter lead. And do you know how quickly that's going to disappear if Team New Zealand get up on the foils and come charging at them?
Give us a number.
I reckon they could have the lead in about 30 seconds if they got it up and going.
We will hold you to that.
Here we go. Here's the new light air profile that we're going to be analyzing. Who's a better displacement boat? None of these boats are built to be displacement boats. I can guarantee you that.
Everyone's parked out there at the moment. And, you know, the nerve-wracking thing is if you are in the lead right now, like Luna Rossa is, they're downwind. So when the breeze shuts down, generally the breeze comes back in, and it comes back in at the top of the course first. So highly likely that Team New Zealand will pick up that first bit of new pressure, get up on the foil, and they could easily go straight by.
You mean the breeze coming from behind, Nathan, like the old days with spinnakers, huh? All of a sudden, we're back. You're back with me.
Okay, here we go. Check out that boat speed. How often did your America's Cup boat do 15 knots?
We were pretty scared if we were doing 15 knots.
And we're saying they're hardly moving now. That's the difference. Team New Zealand trying to get a takeoff here. They're doing 18 knots. This should be a takeoff here pretty easily, but they are very close to the boundary.
Standing by job. I'm happy there.
Emirates Team New Zealand are back up on the foils. You can see the lead start to come down. On the left-hand side, Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli still stuck in the water.
He's a runner. Nice soft runner.
So how quickly is that lead going to come down? Yes, why wouldn't you be excited if you're a fan of Emirates Team New Zealand? Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli fans are a little bit nervous.
If they stick that jibe, they are going straight past Luna Rossa.
Luna Rossa's starting to build a little speed, though. Oh, my God, this is a whole new world.
I didn't put my stopwatch on.
So they are foiling, but they're doing 90 degrees to the wind, so they're not actually making any headway to the bottom mark at all. But all it takes is a little bit of pressure. Apparent wind builds, and they slowly come away. And they're going to be down there. Let's count it down, okay? 30 seconds from now.
So they're doing the same thing. Luna Rossa is saying, if we start foiling, we're going to be too close to the boundary. So let's try to get on the wide part of the track and start all over again.
20 seconds there. Yeah, copy. Copy.
Goodness gracious me.
Lead's coming down. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli struggling to get up in the foils. And look at that. Coming in, hunting. Emirates Team New Zealand.
They stick this, they take the lead.
Well, they're also just looking at pups in the water. It's almost like you're ignoring the other boat at this stage. You're just trying to stay from pressure.
Oh, here they come. Here they come.
Some nervous faces.
I'm getting texts right now from my buddies who sell moths who are just saying to me, this looks like a moth race. You know, you might be first to the top mark, but if you fall off those foils, guys behind you pick up the foil and they are off.
So from 800 metres at least, the lead at Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli. Look at that lead wind down. Emirates Team New Zealand take the lead in race 12. It's a race they need to win to secure the PRADA America's Cup World Series. But this is only the second leg of 6. There is so much more to unfold.
Oh, this is far from over. Shirley, on the water to you, what do you see in terms of wind strength and pressure out there?
Good angle there, Pete.
See from the helicopter angles here that it does look a bit puffy out there. Kenny, breeze came from behind and off they go.
It goes back to having a playbook for every single scenario. I'm so impressed that they jibed at the weather. After going through that weather gate, they jibed and used the long part of the race course. Here we go, they're back up again. But they used the long part of the race course to build rather than take a chance of just building and having to jibe right away, right at the boundary. That was really smart.
Exactly, and it looked like they needed almost the entire width of the course to build the speed to get on the foil, and then they did a jibe on that boundary super close and made it stick, and that's what got them the lead.
Oh, see, they jibed up there in the upper corner, and then they used the entire race course to try to build off of it. And gone. As soon as they get on the foils, gone. Nathan called that one. If they get up, they're going to be ahead, and guess what? That's why he's the best in the business.
It is, but I think it was over 30 seconds. He called 30 seconds, so we'll hold him to that. But what an impressive moment for Emirates Team New Zealand, from being 700-odd metres behind to now 400-odd metres in front.
A lot of race to go here, fellas, and as we learned, easy to come off the foils on both boats. A lot of sailboat race to go.
Good chance of some non-foiling action coming in the next 2 laps, so stand by for more overtaking.
How far?
Who said this wasn't exciting? Even when they're sitting in the water, trying to get up on the foils.
Another 10 past, Pete.
Third or more puff just above us here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Keep the pace on. Keep the pace on.
Yeah. Pacing up a little bit here.
Yeah. Give it another 5. Down. Yeah, boundary drive. Copy. Very slowly going left. Yeah. Happy any time.
3, 2, 1.
Making sure they do this at 1. Nathan, they're going way beyond the ley line just to make sure they're not taking any chance.
All good. Gotcha.
Yeah, and the light air, you definitely want to overlay those bottom marks, come in with speed as opposed to be going early and having to do another job. Team effort to jibe that boat, isn't it? Look at them all talking to each other.
Yeah, I think stretch through, surely. Yeah, nice.
Great shots. We are posting a course change. You will finish after leg 4 at the leeward gate.
There you go, Stephen. Finishing after leg 4 at the leeward gate, which means up and down. That's it. 2 more legs for both boats.
So confirmation, this is 50% of the race done. It started out as a 6-leg race. It'll now be a 4-leg race. And Emirates Team New Zealand.
Italy, you have a boundary penalty. You need to slow.
Italy had a boundary penalty up there, and it kind of had the look of a professional boundary penalty.
I was waiting for you to go to that.
Yeah. So the thing is there, Stephen, is they didn't want to jibe and not make this skate. So, gee, sorry, our problem. We went outside the boundaries, and we'll slow down a little bit, but at least they're not going to have to do another jibe, do a little zigzag here.
You can see exactly, they went out of bounds right where that red line intersected the boundary, and it's a tough call. Either you jibe inside the boundary and are forced to do another jibe, or you go out and you get nailed by the umpires, and he'll keep slowing you down until he thinks that you've done the right job and cleared it, which Richard Slater's now wiped the penalty. You could see that Luna Rossa were doing a few wiggles, trying to slow down, so they were. You want to clear the penalty slowly. You don't want to clear it straight away and fall off the foils. But Team New Zealand there, I don't know if they made that foiling tack in the distance, and I think lead is slowly shrinking now.
So this is the penultimate leg in race number 12.
Here's that penalty, that out of bounds penalty. Yeah, they went a fair chunk out of bounds just to make sure. There's the ley line, so
just
they got
enough to lay the bottom marks.
Yeah, what a shock. Stunner.
Jimmy's never done that before.
Stephen. It's all change again. I hope you can hear me. Emirates Team New Zealand off the foils. A bad tack is all on.
Thank you, Shirley.
Spot on, Shirley. Look at that lead. It's come down again. Race on. Emirates Team New Zealand with a marginal lead on Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli.
So I guess you've got to think about, are we going boundary to boundary, minimising the number of tacks because they're the risk areas, or are you just tacking when you feel like you've got the best speed or the most amount of pressure?
What a Saturday afternoon of racing we have had. And what is most noticeable, you wait to make one small error and it is going to cost you.
The irony is we were watching the penalty of Luna Rossa. We were watching it on replay, and Team New Zealand made their error then. They're going to be tacking to starboard. What do you think, Nathan? Do they have a piece of them, or is that a clear cross?
I think they have a piece, tacking onto starboard, right away the whole way here, and it's about tack execution now.
Turning now, Pete, go now.
So attacked by Luna Rossa, and Emirates Team New Zealand tacked, essentially got across and tacked just up to weather. So they did cross, but oh, are they close to being off the foils again.
It's a true test of who's got the best performing light wind foils right now, isn't it? Who can keep it foiling and hang on. We'll just go on board and listen. It sounds pretty intense on board with Glenn Ashley's voice of Team New Zealand.
Whatever you like, then. Coming up on the breeze, man. Okay. Pressure looks good on the bow, eh?
That's the voice of the Kiwis right now, communicating about pumps.
Where do we want to approach top left? I think we just need to get way wider out of these tacks, guys. Make sure we get down to like 90 if we're struggling. That one was about 60.
Peter Burling saying basically go back where you came from in these tacks. Anything you can do to keep the boat on the foil.
90 means 90-degree true wind angle, essentially sideways to the...
Francesco Bruni saying he's happy with that tack, and we saw on their stern camera Emirates Team New Zealand made the tack as well. The distance is still close, 90 metres. Speed similar, maybe a little faster to Team New Zealand right now.
Only one more leg after this, four-leg course.
How good is this racing?
This is exciting for you non-sailors, Stephen. I see the excitement, and you're on. This is a good sign. This is good.
I love what I'm loving is how quickly Emirates Team New Zealand got back up on the boards, but how quickly Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli have come back into this game, because they're just quickly.
Why are they not tacking? What's going on here? Luna Rossa have got a split. This could be a big moment in this race. Sorry to interrupt there. That just, to me, was like, you stay with him if you're winning. You don't give him this opportunity, and maybe they just think they can get to ley line, they can avoid attack, or maybe there's more pressure. But if Pete Burling gets this wrong, might have given it away.
I think they're more nervous about staying on the foils, so they're just trying to minimize maneuvers. But now they got to hit a ley line here at the same time.
Just a reminder, if Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli can snatch this one back and win race 12, we are tied between Luna Rossa, American Magic, and Emirates Team New Zealand. And I've just been informed the winner of the Prada's America's Cup World Series will be drawn at the press conference tonight. Just letting you know.
Welcome to the America's Cup. That's a new one. Because it's an unbreakable tie.
Unbreakable tie.
Yeah, between the three boats. Usually you do who beat who last, but each of them, because it's an odd number, each of them would have exactly the same the same numbers. I mean, can't make this stuff up. Only in the America's Cup.
It's not just tense on the water, it's tense on the deck as well, on the shore at the race village.
They're split again.
That distance has come down, that lead's shrunk down pretty quickly too. It was 90.
Now remember, top right was soft on the first downwind. Well, that's where they all fell off the foils, and that's where Luna Rossa is heading right now. Shirley on the water, is there any obvious side that's got more pressure?
Okay, good, guys. Happy.
No, I mean, I think sailors all around the world will recognise this scenario. You know, when you go out for your evening race, you've been looking at great conditions all day, and this is what you get. I mean, it was you know, not a strong thermal, and it's very much dying away. Just really, you got to look to the pups, just sail in what you've got, and I think, you know, Kenny's right. You just got to tack when you're feeling most comfortable and you've got a bit of pressure.
Stand by. 3, 2,
approaching the top gate for the final time. Who has the advantage? Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli with a lead of 64 metres on Emirates Team New Zealand. It's going to be close to the top gate.
Crossing by 3. Okay, we're going right. I've been going right. Fairly driving, indeed. Good angle, 5 away. 3.
But it will be Emirates Team New Zealand to get the gate first and head on down towards the finish. But we're not done with yet.
I'm surprised they had. It seemed like they made that decision to go around the right-hand gate really late. From a communication standpoint, it's kind of unlike the Kiwis sometimes.
I think what they were trying to say is we want to go right because it avoids the tack, but if we don't cross, we'll need to tack. And so Glenn was to leeward, constantly giving the updates on relatives, and it was marginal cross, and then Luna Rossa didn't accelerate really well out of their tack, and it became a very easy decision at the end. But a lot of chat on board, isn't it?
18 seconds the difference. That's all the lead was at the final gate as they head towards the finish in this last race of the Prada America's Cup World Series. We remind you again, a win by Prada, it goes to a 3-way tie draw at the press conference. A win by Emirates Team New Zealand, and the champagne will be popped, and they'll get top seating for tomorrow's Christmas race.
Everybody's got the same opinion. No, don't let them splash. Oh, they got back up.
Sigh of relief. Leave to fight another jibe.
Exactly. There you go.
Got to stick with those in those maneuvers. You're giving us a heart attack.
Still 5 or 10 left of normal. Copy.
Emirates Team New Zealand flying towards the finish. The lead slowly extending on Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, sitting at over 200 metres now. But get one thing minutely wrong, and that can change in the blink of an eye.
Lifting a little bit here.
Must be up just a click in terms of pressure right now because both boats are foiling and making their jibes downwind.
It's good, but not any higher, Pedro.
Probably 2, maybe 1 jibe left for both boats. So New Zealand, anyway, they lose this now as if they fall off the foils in a jibe.
Sorry, I'm a bit late on.
Well, they've done it before.
Not the best job. You hear him go, oof.
Pete said I went a little bit late on the board down, managed to catch it and just drive it down using the battery-powered hydraulics, and Luna Rossa have made the jibe too. Both looked like they had a tough jibe.
Yeah, they were pointing at each other after the jibes.
So you can see Emirates Team New Zealand, if they continue straight, they're going to reach that red line before they get to the boundary. So pretty obvious right now that they'll get there in 1. Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli, probably similar setup on the other side. So 1 jibe apiece to go. 250-metre lead coming down here. Going to be big change for Luna Rossa to take the lead here.
To think on the first leg, they were beached, literally beached. And now we've got this. Rossa Prada Pirelli had that very good lead. And then suddenly, Peter Burling and Emirates Team New Zealand found the wind, used all of the course, as you said, Kenny, and got their boat up on those foils.
We're all learning. You know, we're learning as commentators. The sailing world is learning what this is all about. We see this threshold of this very light air, and this is going to become a major talking point for every one of these teams.
3, 2, 1. Sorry.
Here we go.
So jibing on the ley line. If they get this ley line and nail the jibe, coming into the finish on starboard tack with full right of way as well. Looked like a very smooth jibe by the boys. Should be happy with that one.
Very happy with that one.
2, 1. Yeah.
Lead's coming down. It's growing again. That numbers.
That one
elusive,
last
isn't
jibe.
it?
That one last jibe by Emirates Team New Zealand, in my mind, kind of made it.
How close it has been, but what a way to finish the Prada America's Cup World Series. Emirates Team New Zealand cross the line and win the World Series against Rossa Prada Pirelli and take top seeding for the Christmas race tomorrow.
Now just carry on straight.
It was a good race yesterday, wasn't it, for fans of Emirates Team New Zealand, as we see calmish waters on the Waitemata Harbour and Rangitoto. But the one thing we are going to talk about following that race, and it has been chat, there's been a lot of chat about this too, Kenny and Nathan, is the fact that Emirates Team New Zealand, and in particular their helmsman Peter Burling, struggling in the pre-start situation.
Well, it's been well documented that this is the last day, that really the challengers, everything shifts towards the challengers now, because they're going to start racing against each other and getting better every single day. How to maneuver these boats, how to race these boats, how to set these boats up. They're going to be racing against each other every day for a month and a half, whereas the defender is off on their own. And we've talked a lot about what are they going to do to practice? This is their only boat. They don't have a second boat. They don't have a second crew to go out and race into you know, kind of build up so that you got to build up that sense of what to do at a moment's notice. And we've talked about what can they do. And Nathan, I kind of think I tripped over something. And we used to have Etchells. We used to go sail Etchells 22s against each other to practice match racing for the IACC boats. And they were great. It was very similar, much smaller scale, very similar. How about moths? I mean, for example, have you gotten a phone call yet from Peter Burling asking to go? Because moths kind of do everything these boats do on a tiny little scale, but it might give them a feel for what the pre-start is like on foils.
Well, Kenny, it's very kind of you. No, I've not received a phone call yet, but maybe after your comment just there, the phone might ring. But in all seriousness, when we were in Bermuda, we had the same exact question. How do we prepare within our own team to get better at starting practice? We were fortunate in Bermuda that we could race some of the other teams and do some pre-start practice because that was permitted within the protocol. But what we actually found is if you want to do efficient in-house racing, you have to go into smaller boats. So as Ken was saying, the Etchells were what we used when you were sailing the monohulls. And when we were in Bermuda, we had small foiling catamarans, but we actually did go to moths in the end. We realized that the moth is probably one of the most maneuverable boats. They're foiling, they're very similar to this AC75, but only need one person in each boat. So, for example, the likes of Peter Burling and Blair Tuke, Glenn Ashby, and even their coach Ray Davies are quite handy moth sailors themselves. They have competed in world championships. Pete's actually won a couple of world championships in the moth class, and you know, maybe this is an opportunity for them to go, okay, let's put the boat in the shed. We know it's fast. Give the shore crew some time to keep developing the boat. But hey, if we can't sail against other teams, maybe we get in the moth, maybe we get it on the race course and we do a bunch of different pre-start practices and really try and work on some set plays. You know, the moth, just like the 75s, it doesn't foil very well in the light airs. You know, you've got to practice all your different scenarios, and I think it's a great idea, and if I was a part of that team, I'd be pushing very hard for it.
That's all well and good, and people might be feeling that you're being a little harsh on Peter Burling, because you go back to Bermuda, he was a slow starter, and when it mattered, he got it right.
This is different. Upwind starts makes it completely different. This upwind starts versus the reaching starts, and that first reaching leg that they had, that Nathan and all the rest of the teams had in Bermuda, that's a completely different mentality. This is much more, even though these boats are nothing like what the old match racing circuit used to be in, the upwind start is. And the upwind start, I think, changes the game completely and gives a bit of an advantage to the people who were tried and true match racers, and that's Spithill and Ainsley and Barker.
Yeah, exactly. The guys on the other three teams have got a lot of experience, and Peter Burling, through his junior sailing, was in youth classes, straight into Olympic Games at the age of 17, and got into the America's Cup when it was reaching starts, and in Bermuda, that setup was different. Might have been similar in that same time, but we were trying to target reaching, maximum speed, short reach, Mark 1, bear away, go down to the bottom. So your whole pre-start box setup was very different. What you were trying to achieve in the pre-start was different. This time, you've got to actually learn the new way of sailing.
Let me ask you and try and get you a one-word answer out of both of you. Are you concerned, if you're Emirates Team New Zealand, about the starts? Yes or no?
Marginally. I'm on the fence.
That was more than one word.
Yes.
All right, there you go. So some thoughts from Ken Reid and Nathan Outteridge on Team New Zealand's pre-start routine. Will it get better when it matters? You will find out as we are still becalmed on the Waitemata Harbour. So just a quick note to you as to what the weather is doing at the moment. Partly cloudy, lovely day out on the water, but it's the third bar you want to have a look at. Wind, 1 to 4 knots. The minimum is 6.5 knots. The maximum is 21 knots. So well out of range at the moment. In the meantime, let us take you back to race 10 of the PRADA America's Cup World Series between Emirates Team New Zealand and American Magic. American Magic coming into this race with a win over Italy yesterday by 30 seconds, and Emirates Team New Zealand with a 1 minute and 42-second win against Team Ineos UK.
You got that corner of the box,
Check him out, they're staying far away from each other. Pete Burling and Emirates Team New Zealand have gone through the starting box and they're sailing up and high. Almost must have hit something there. Glennie sounded pretty excited again. There's Marshall boats out there trying to avoid. Huge separation between the two boats.
It was a little boat, a little dinghy right up top, a little Marshall boat. That would get your blood pumping. Yeah, this starting box, Nathan, is so much bigger today than it was yesterday. So these guys are really able to spread out, and it's not really forced, that forced hand-to-hand.
Looks a lot more like what I was doing in Bermuda. Bigger starting box, boats staying apart, and one moment where they converge, and it's generally just a time on distance start. New Zealand look pretty early coming back here. American Magic further away, maybe late, but software wouldn't have them that late. I think New Zealand have got a bit on here. They're going to maybe even drop off their foils or have to roll into a port tack start.
19 seconds to go to the start. Have they got it right, Emirates Team New Zealand? Running along the front edge, you might say, of the start line.
Yeah, the
9
Americans
seconds to
are
go.
going to be a little late, possibly as well, yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Not by much, though.
Emirates Team New Zealand are away, as are American Magic.
Here's a big one, Nathan. These big split starts, right? All the way to the weather end, to the right-hand end of the starting line, all the way to the left-hand end of the starting line. The boundary protection doesn't really help you here, right? So you're going to have to, you tack, and you're going to have to make a move. So they can either cross or they're going to have to duck. They don't get that boundary protection.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Tight boats means the boundary will protect the leeward boat. Wide and right, like Americans are right now, means that when they come out of the boundary, it's going to be a port starboard situation. Shirley, What does it look like out there?
I'm excited for this cross, Nathan. It looks close.
And I guarantee you they get tacked on, because the aggression of Terry Hutchinson and Dean Barker has been very obvious through this entire campaign so far. They're not going to let you out of their sights. They're going to tack on your breeze. But I think it wasn't the best tack they had in the world, and they might have kind of gave them a little bit of loose cover here, didn't they? They kind of tacked early.
Well, Ken, I think what happened there is they tacked directly in front, but to build and maintain on the foils, they're exiting quite low, so they bear away to build speed to get on the foil. Pete Burling sails a high mode, and now he's living on their hip.
And they're both sailing a high mode right now, down in the 20s. They're trying to just live there. The Kiwis are trying to live off the hip, that windward quarter of American Magic.
Down speed tack, slow entry. You know, if you're below 30 knots on the entry of the tack, it makes it hard to keep the boat on the foils. Dean Barker now pacing the boat up a bit, going to take it wide and right out to that right-hand side under the boundary. Come back in again on starboard tack.
You know, some people might wonder why the Kiwis didn't just tack right away. When American Magic tacked in front of them, why didn't they just tack right away? They just want to give themselves some space to the boundaries.
Thoughts, Shirley?
Yeah, Shirley, what's the wind strength? Is it dropping or is it staying up?
Yeah, it's much the same, Kenny. I mean, I like that right-hand side of the course. It's like the wind is curving round the island there, and if anything, it looks slightly stronger. So I can see why. You know, we're not used to seeing the Americans just doing their own thing, but I think there might be something there that they're after. I did speak to Terry Hutchinson this morning about how aggressive they've been sailing, and he said to me, well, you only have to win by a second. So I think that's going to be their plan for this event.
That's an old Tom Whiddenism, one of the master tacticians, my boss for a number of years, but we sailed together. Terry, Tom, and I sailed together, and they use that expression all the time. Not the best tack in the world there, Nathan.
No, it looked like the board came up, clicked too early, and the whole boat just dropped into the water. It shows you how critical it is to transition the load between these foils. It looks like tack wasn't greatest, and American Magic maybe a small gain to them, but remember, they still have another tack to go here.
American Magic with a marginal lead, sitting around 84, 85 metres and climbing somewhat, as Emirates Team New Zealand are the chaser. We know it's quick, but this American Magic boat has come out of the gates in this America's Cup World Series and really shown they are in for this game as they tack for an entry into the top gate.
Both boats are going to have to tack, so equal maneuvers here, but there will be a split at this mark. So one boat going one way downwind, the other boat going the other.
One way go.
Only 12 seconds in this, Stephen, and that's a tight race. That's one puff at this stage right now, because remember, 1 knot of wind speed could be 3-4 knots of boat speed, so it doesn't take much to make up for less than 100 meters. And you know Terry right now, he wants to keep it close. He wants to keep a tight match race. He doesn't like this split. I guarantee you that.
I guess the one good thing is that when they come back together, American Magic will be on starboard tack, and what the tacticians on board will be doing is they'll be looking at the race software and working out how many jibes is it to the bottom mark. You can see both green lights flashing, so they're about as far away from each other as they can get right now. But I think right now, if I was a tactician, I'd be looking at the software. Is it 2 jibes to the bottom, or is it going to be 3? And we're going to have an intersection here between 2 boats in the center of the course.
What's your call on this?
I got American Magic still ahead by a couple of lengths. Both boats have 1 more jibe to go.
So the lead, not that much, 10 metres at best, as both boats head towards the bottom gate for the first time. This will be a 6-leg race. This is leg number 2.
The apparent winds are incredible. I mean, it looks like they're just sailing straight downwind.
10 knots of breeze, 35 knots, probably about 155 is their angle. It's very impressive numbers for a sailing boat.
It's how quick we've gotten used to 35 knots. I mean, for a lot of us right now, it's like, oh, they're kind of going slow. They're going 35 knots, for crying out loud.
So right now, they're out phase here. Dean Barker is saying 1 in left. Just follow this for a bit.
Nathan, I spoke to Paul Goodison yesterday about his pace, and he said, look, downwind, we are just lower, same speed, lower. They're so confident in their downwind pace.
Here and anything to probably less as we get to the bottom. Already on 15, so boundary jibe.
You can hear both skippers there talking about boundary jibes. They're just racing geometry right now of the course, using the software, and going to stay out of phase at the bottom marks as well, I guess.
Board down here in 3, 2, 1, board down. Working this down straight away.
This will be pretty important if either of them can get into ley line here and not have to do another maneuver.
We can get down here. Big Trav, go Trav. It's like marginal cross.
Marginal cross is right. Remember, the Kiwis are on starboard tack right now.
American Magic with a lead close to 100 metres on Emirates Team New Zealand, heading towards the bottom gate for the first time. Both sitting around that mid 30 knot region.
Marginal.
We are crossing. Left gate. Yeah, left gate. Giving enough space here if you want to.
They're both going to lay this gate.
Problem turning up here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Nice pressure on the bow.
The gap was 12 seconds at the top gate. At the bottom gate, it's 3.
First time we've seen American Magic get eaten up a little bit downwind, but I think that was as much a wind shift, surely, as anything, that the Kiwis got a nice little shift on their side of the course coming into that mark.
Yeah, I agree, Kenny. They did very well in the second half of that leg.
You know, Nathan, in a way, this was all set up by that very first tack that American Magic put on top of the Kiwis by not just going right smack in front of them and forcing them to tack right away. It allowed the whole race course right now kind of to be set up by early in the race. Here we are late in the race, and the splits are allowed to happen because of one little thing that happened early on in the race.
Well, here we go, another opportunity for them to right the wrongs and get back in phase here and really hurt the Kiwis.
5 lengths. You'll see him in 7.
Twice as much.
He's easy cross. Going nicely, but that's just the phase. Whether he hits it, this is what we do then.
Hit him?
It's carrying on at the moment.
Too late.
So Dean Barker decides to keep going. I think talked about it and then realised it was too late. You do a rush tack at that moment, you're at risk of the other boat. Either you do a bad tack and you fall off the foils, or the other boat can punch through to leeward and take the starboard tack advantage. Now the boats are still out of phase. It's all about shift phase now. If the wind starts to go to the left, American Magic are going to make the gain. If the wind starts to shift to the right, Team New Zealand are going to make the gain.
I guess worst case we dip them, you know, and
I think both boats like the right-hand side of the race course. They're already thinking that they might be behind on this next, which I find hard to believe. It looks like a fair lead right now, but I think they like the right side of the race.
This is right banana, but probably going to go below green here. Speed build.
Voice of Dean Barker on board American Magic.
Back into a little lefty now. I think we'll just pick up this pressure on the bow. And there we go.
Lefty means left-hand shift. That's good news for if you're an American fan right now. If we've got a left-hand shift on the course, high chance of making the cross out of this tack.
Kiwis look high up there, though. It's hard to judge.
Oh, Kenny, you heard Dean say there's a big banana, and I think that's right. There's a wind bend round that corner of the island, and to me the Kiwis have done very well by going right to the boundary.
You know, because of that, Shirley, I'm surprised they didn't tack. I'm surprised they didn't tack on them and keep that right-hand side.
What do you think? We're crossing or not? Okay, building now.
Could be a dial down here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I've got him.
Coming behind us is 5.
Coming up now.
It's the only option though, Andy.
So in the end, Emirates Team New Zealand decided to hold course, no dial down. Typically there you dial it down the port tack boat to increase your lead. Not sure why we have a protest coming up right now, but what this is setting up is both boats coming in opposite tacks at the top mark. Going to be a split, potentially boats coming in overlapped. If both boats make it to ley line from here, we're definitely in for a split at the top mark. Same thing happens on the downwind.
It's got 20 to lay. It's a little more visually.
Emirates Team New Zealand heading towards that top gate to complete leg 3 of 6.
10 to ley line.
The lead's been pretty stable by American Magic for the majority of this leg at around 80 to 100 meters.
Up until here. And I honestly have no idea why American Magic protested there. I can't even speculate. I have no idea. You look at the straight line. That straight line of the Kiwis right there, they didn't even try to bear down and as Nathan said, dial down the Americans.
Oh, soft in that corner, isn't it?
You've got to sort this out.
Voice of Dean Barker not happy. Not happy at all, is he? We've got to sort this out. We didn't see what happened there. Maybe we'll get a replay later on.
Splashdown American Magic lead change on leg 3, the completion of leg 3 in race number 10. The big race. Emirates Team New Zealand go to the front.
Up on the bow, better breeze the other way. 20 seconds.
I don't think American Magic are up and going here again. 25, 26 knots. They must be close to falling, but it's amazing one bad tack and what can happen in a race.
2, 1, down. Turning. No lower. 9.5.
Well, as a fan of good, tight boat racing, that's a shame. And unfortunately, again, we're working out all of our bugs here. Unfortunately, the cameras on board American Magic aren't working at this stage. So they're searching desperately for a way to see what happened during that splash, but unfortunately, we may not have it.
Well, Kenny, we might not be able to see, but Shirley, you're on the water. Did you see what happened there?
I think they had some kind of manual issue. We were on the other side of the course with Emirates, so not a real clarity to add, but yeah, definitely they were. You heard them on board, very frustrated. You know, why is this happening again? We have to stop this happening. And I think there's some kind of manual failure.
It was the first sign of real frustration from Dean Barker we've heard in this whole regatta so far, as Emirates Team New Zealand start to pull away from American Magic. Their lead sitting now at over 580. It just keeps climbing. We know Te Rehotai is fast, but they got a bit of a break.
They got a break. There's no question now. They had ground them down. They were in a pretty good spot. Whether they were going to, with a good tack by American Magic, were they going to cross or not? Unfortunately, we'll never know. Tight sailboat race here, though, Nathan. Nobody had a massive speed edge one way or the other here right now. Tight boat race.
Yeah, there was nothing in that race up until that moment. And unfortunately now, Dean Barker and the crew were just waiting for Team New Zealand to make some form of error to let them back into this race. And It's disappointing for us. You know, we were having a great time coming in that, but I bet you it's more disappointing for them.
No question about it.
There must be encouraging signs for both these teams, though. Light air racing.
It's only 700 meters. We've seen stranger things happen. Again, and now it's a geometry game for Emirates Team New Zealand. They want to minimize their maneuvers going into the gate and try to pick the side coming out of the gate where they think the pressure is, because it is very apparent that it's kind of shifty, puffy out there again.
The one thing that's been apparent over the last 3 days of this PRADA America's Cup World Series, all teams have work to do.
And they'll all be honest with you and tell you exactly the same. That's exactly correct.
They just won't tell us what they need to do.
Not ever in a million years.
Oh, to be a mole inside one of these teams that have a little bit of more insight as to what's really going on. But it is.
We'll work it. That's what we got Nathan for. He's current with all these guys. He'll be in there. They don't even know he's going to be sweet talking them, and before you know it, they'll be spilling their guts.
Yeah, but if they've watched any of the commentary, they'll know that I'll spill it to the whole world. So good luck getting any information now. I've had years to get information and no one will tell me a thing. And these teams are top secret. They don't share any information to anybody.
Such is the intrigue of the America's Cup. Emirates Team New Zealand. Bottom gate, still 2 legs to go. And their lead is sizable on American Magic in the key race of this World Series.
All good.
The one thing I'm noticing is on that downwind, no one was really going to the western side of the course. They're all jibing and keeping closer to all those spectators on the eastern side. The wind must be just flowing over Rangitoto Island. You can see where Emirates Team New Zealand are going now. Slowly, I think it must be just lighter on that left-hand side of the course, because otherwise you'd just be going boundary, jibing and minimising manoeuvres. So I must think it's worth the extra jibe.
So another example of one small error in these big AC75 falling monohulls can cost you distance and the result as American Magic comes into the gate.
So 56 seconds, it was 55 at the top. So aside of that one error that we saw, or that one problem they had in that tack, boats are going very similar speeds around this race course. And I guess what the teams will be doing now is they'll be collecting the data. They'll be looking at their boat around the track. They'll be trying to work out, okay, all they can probably really do at this point is time the deltas between the two boats and think, if only we didn't have that error.
I may sound like I'm harping on about light here, but Nathan, we've had a discussion before as well with Kenny about in February, March, in this particular area, the winds do get lighter, do they not?
Generally, yes. As the summer starts to heat up here in Auckland, the sea breezes get a little bit lighter. You know, the hotter days draw these lighter sea breezes, and today's a typical summer's day. When the teams are training here in August, September, October, in the lead up to this, you have a lot of southwest wind patterns coming straight from the bottom of Australia, coming through, blowing 20, 25 knots and 15 degrees. Now summer's turning it on, and this is a real taste of what we're going to see over the coming months.
So the data you will generate and grab from these races, particularly in these light airs, is gold if you are doing it okay.
Oh, this is gold. Even if you're not doing it okay, you just want to get the data of how your boat's performing in this, 8 to 10 knots out there. You're refining your maneuvers. You're refining your sail selection and how you're setting up not just the jibs, which jibs you pick, but what kind of depths you want to use on the sails. There's lots of technical stuff going on that all the boffins in the team will be sitting there analysing all race long.
I think I'd rather be the guy doing it okay at this point in my development going forward, not the guy that's not done okay.
Well, you'd want to be the team that everyone's chasing, right? You never want to be that team that is trying to pull back that distance, because every team is going to improve, but if they all improve at the same rate,
you're in trouble. You know, the sail size thing, even these jibs on the two boats are quite different, but sail sizes, these are 145 square meter mainsails. Like I said before, twin skin mainsails, but Then they have jib choices between 90 meters down to 150 meters. So massive differences in jib sizes and headsail sizes, that front sail on the boat. So plenty of choices to be made. You see fathead jibs, you know, big square-headed jibs. You see small little low-aspect pin. So a lot of different variations as to choices just in sails, never mind what these hydrofoils are actually going to look like and what they need to do.
And I guess, Ken, the sails is really the only thing that can change once they declare measurement for the racing. In Bermuda, we had 2 sets of foils. We had 4 foils at our disposal, and we could pick any combination. Whereas here, they have to pick it a week in advance and stick to that foil, which means when the designers are designing foils for the America's Cup, they've got to go through a full range of conditions. It's not just a light wind set and a strong wind set.
Yeah, that's a big difference, isn't it? You and I have talked about this a lot. The ability to pick your long-range weather forecasting in order to then choose your foils, it's huge. But the reality is, like you said, these foils are going to have to do everything. And you guys had, you chose by the day, right? What time of day would you actually choose?
Penultimate gate for Emirates Team New Zealand. Then they're on the homeward run. This time it will be a downwind finish. The earlier race was an upwind finish because we had a late start, but this one is on time and around they go, heading towards the finish.
Well, Ken, back to your point on the time we were choosing foils in Bermuda. It was early in the morning. 6 a.m. I think was roughly the call we had to get the foils in the boat. And so that's up at 5:30 for a weather briefing, work out what the forecast is for that 2-hour race window for the day. Shore team would roll in, put the foils in, and away you go. Whereas these guys they're picking it not just weeks in advance, they're picking it months in advance when they confirm the foil design.
You've got to get it right. You've just got to get it right.
There's a little luck involved there, though. Obviously, there's going to be a little luck involved, but it is an all-purpose foil that they're going to have to end up choosing.
American Magic for the final time at the top gate.
Just get settled and then
chasing
straight away.
Emirates Team New Zealand. After splashing down earlier in the race, it has cost them dearly. And now it's blown out to over a minute behind.
Standing by. 2, 1, more down.
Ken, did you notice that when they dropped that windward foil down into the water, the boat's attitude didn't change at all?
But that's got to be some sort of soft. I mean, that's incredible how smooth. Now, but I also noticed these guys upwind during all their tacks in the first leg. They did a little wheelie each time. So as smooth as that, probably the flap on the back end of the hydrofoil, that flap on the back end has to be probably at a perfect tilt as it hits the water, right? I thought they were a little out of kilter going upwind on the first leg, American Magic.
I think the other thing we've got to remember is it's not just the flaps on the foils that you've got to preset to get to the correct angle for the drop. You've got to get that angle spot on for the speed at which the boat's going, but also at the pitch angle at which the boat's sailing at. So you adjust the pitch of these boats by adjusting the rudder angle. If you change the rudder angle and add more lift at the back, it drives the boat more nose down. If you take the rudder lift out, it lifts the bow up. It's very three-dimensional, these boats.
So in really simplistic terms, could I use the outboard motor example of a pitch on an outboard motor, the which way you get it out of the water and then smooth it out and plane it?
Sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it makes sense. You tilt the engine on the back of your fishing boat. When you get some speed, you tilt it up, you lift the nose, you reduce the drag, and off you go. It's the same analogy, but what the rudder's really doing is if you add the rudder lift, it changes the angle of attack of that lured foil in the water. So you've got the front part of the foil that's fixed, you change the angle of attack of the boat, the foil changes with it, and you're just tweaking it with the flap on the back of it. So it's a bit different to what we had in Bermuda where we would rake the whole foil, which would change the lift. These guys are just doing fine-tuning of the rudder and fine-tuning on the flaps.
Emirates Team New Zealand with almost 1,000-meter lead on American Magic, and this is a monster win in the scale of things. When we talk about winning this PRADA America's Cup World Series, they only need one more win. That's all they need as they cross the finish line. Emirates Team New Zealand do the job on American Magic. Now all they have to do is beat Rossa Prada Pirelli in the final race, and the World Series is theirs.
Heavy board out.
They'll be happy with the win, Nathan, but I think they'd like that starting sequence back. As the boat's starting all the way down to the left-hand or pin end of the starting line, and you're giving your competitor that sort of gap, it's really hard to ever survive that. And it's just not a place you want to be. So I think Emirates Team New Zealand would like to have that starting sequence back and start up a little closer to American Magic to kind of control the game a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll have one more chance to have another go to pre-start today against Rossa Prada Pirelli, assuming the racing all continues on schedule. And that will be the message from the coach. Boys, win the start.
American Magic coming to the finish of race number 10. It's one you might say early on they were looking strong in, and one splashdown, one small mistake has cost them a point. And they've got to think now as they cross the line, they've got to turn around in the blink of an eye and face up to Ineos Team UK in race 11, and I'm talking minutes.
You heard Dean Barker say, "Nice effort, boys, good upbeat," and then he said, "It's just very frustrating."
Actually, no, we don't need to sail off. We're next. Yeah, no, sorry, dropping it at the end.
Racing from yesterday, which was day 3 of the PRADA America's Cup World Series, and that looks like Ineos Team UK under tow. We are still waiting for wind on the Waitemata Harbour. Let's go on to the water. Double Olympic gold medalist, the best eyes on the water for this 36th PRADA America's World Cup, and that is Shirley Robertson. What is going on out there? Do you feel any wind, Shirley?
Stephen, it's a very tricky day for Ian Murray, the race director. We've had, wind off the city coming from the western side of the North Island. And here we've had some, wind coming down from the north, and I could still see a little bit of that. So it may come. I'm not completely giving up hope yet. Actually, at the islands further out at Tiree, they've got 7 to 9 knots. So, there is still hope. The clock, though, is very much ticking down. We're into the evening now. So I guess not a huge amount of chance, but still very much keeping it a little bit optimistic.
Yeah, is your gut feel that we will get racing today?
Well, I can see breeze on the horizon, but I know it has to get the racing away by 6 o'clock, so we may run out of time, but still a chance, Stephen, still a chance.
Thanks for the insight, Shirley. Just a note too that we have been notified by the race committee that if we do not get any racing by 6 p.m. local time, then racing will be abandoned. So I'll go to Kenny Reid, Nathan Outridge, just briefly. Has this been a lost day of getting data for all these teams?
Certainly a lost day, especially for this boat right now, because again, this is the final day. We keep harping on this, but I think it's super critical. The final day they get to sail against the challengers, and they needed all the time they possibly could against those other boats to get data and to hone their starting line sequence.
Yeah, as you can see now, Team New Zealand look like they're starting to pack up the boat. They've putting these mats down, these mats that are going down on the deck there to protect the deck. The deck's very thin, very fragile, and they have them down in the morning and the evening. When they start pulling the boat apart, they don't want to drop any tools that could make damage to the boat, because every time you drop a tool on the deck, you have to repair it. And so these guys here are just looking like they're hedging. A sailor, a hedging means, it's not going to happen. And this is perfect hedging right now.
You got to win the race to the harbor. The race isn't over till the garage door is shut, and these guys look like they're on their way. This is a good win for Ineos.
So that looks very much like Ineos Team UK may have called it a day. They may know something that we do not know. 6 p.m. cut-off time. No racing by 6 p.m. And the Christmas race is done and dusted with 3/4 of a race one done. In the meantime, let us give you some racing on these AC75s. We'll take you back to day 2 and race 6 of the Prada America's Cup World Series between Te Rehotai and Britannia.
Copy, where is he?
I'll take you to Angle.
Copy.
He's going to dial.
Copy.
Here comes a port tack start at dip. Could be a dial down at the same time. 80 knot closing speeds.
Yeah, up hard.
Now they're past the ley line. Should he have dialed down there or just go up? That ultra-aggressive move by Ainsley might have cost him.
Keeping it low for you, TWA.
Great three-start manoeuvres by both yachts, and we are away on
Big jib here, boys. Big
I think Ben Ainsley there Ben Ainsley went really aggressive on the dial down there, and I think he kind of blew it.
Yeah,
Team New Zealand, he let him off the hook. He didn't force them to tackle jibe. He didn't park the start. And now Emirates Team New Zealand slightly ahead to Leeward, sailing up to the boundary, going to come out on starboard tack. Really tight situation developing here.
That could be frustration and aggression all at once. You know, trying to take it all out in one shot. But boy, oh boy, you would have thought if he had just pulled him in and crossed the starting line, he'd have a several boat length lead rather than holding on for dear life here. With Emirates Team New Zealand about to be able to tack on the starboard and actually have right away coming off the boundary.
I think he's thinking the same thing. If he's going to go, he'll go shortly.
20 seconds. I think it's after green, please.
18 to boundary, 16, 15, 14.
By. 3, 2, 1. Murray. Turning. He's gone below. Every press.
Good angle. I will. I roll.
That was a nice looking tack, wasn't it? Both boats foiling tacking, and Ineos boat looks like it's working fine today.
The good news is if you're a British fan, you've got a race boat at least right now. May not have gone perfectly off the starting line, but you got a race boat.
Just looking for a nice solid late to right turn. He will face us.
That's the voice of Giles Scott. We're on board the British boat with the comms. He will face us, which means when they tack, when the black boat tacks, the red boat's going to go right on top of them and try to disturb their air.
Go all the way to boundary here, Ben, to be sure. The lane.
Giles Scott trying to be a tactician to Leeward, Nathan. How hard would that be if you're on the low side of the boat?
Well, definitely on this tack, it's going to really be difficult to see Emirates Team New Zealand up to windward, but he's probably looking at a little race software. You know, they've got computer systems on board in his cockpit, so he'll be looking at course geometry and, you know, where the ley line is. He's saying if you go to boundary, that'll be a ley line. They've just dropped the foil rolling into attack. This one's looking very nice once again. And as expected, Team New Zealand faced them right on top of them and no getting by in that position.
Giles called it right there.
Emirates Team New Zealand and Ineos Team UK falling towards the top gate. Leg 1 of 6 in race 6 of the America's Cup World Series here on the Waitemata Harbour in Auckland, New Zealand, as they head towards Rangitoto, this iconic landmark.
You can really see the disturbed air, whereas UK actually was right behind Team New Zealand when they tacked, and look at how far they've fallen off.
Emirates Team New Zealand. You heard the call. They were very close to that marker. They had to pull out. How? Wow!
He can't see anything.
That could have been carnage.
He can't see anything. That's why Dean Barker is actually driving to Leeward, going around a lot of these marks. You can't see anything when you're up to windward, so you're totally reliant on somebody down to Leeward to tell you what to do.
I'd love to hear the comms coming off that boat approaching that mark. I'm pretty sure I heard Glenn Ashby say, no lower, no lower. Pete, listen to me, no lower. And they had to do a wiggle around it. Could you imagine if they hit that mark doing 40 knots?
4, 3,
Here we go.
no lower, no lower, 2, 1, away you go.
Listen to my comms.
And then Pete says, sorry.
No law, no law, no law. 2, 1, away you go. Listen to
Oh, that was close.
Listen to my comms. That was the voice of father saying, kid.
No law, no law, no law. 2, 1, away you go. Listen to the comms. Copy.
So while we all gather our breath after
back to the races.
that moment, back to the downwind leg number 2 of 6 in race 6. And oh my goodness, we have seen it all in these first 1.5 races. Shirley, could you believe what you saw there?
I've been pretty close to those marks, Steve, and you would not want to hit them. They are hard. They are solid. But I think we've all been in that position, steering to windward, not quite seeing the mark. I'm watching the Kiwis now just extending away, completely got in their stride, like we saw yesterday in the first race. When they're free and they're off, they have an extra. They just have an extra pace.
Those marks are about 3 metres high, 2.5 metres wide, and they are not to be messed with. I had a look inside one. You could actually have a nice little party in one of those too. It'd be a nice little place to have a
They're made of fiberglass, right? They're not soft, so most of us go around marks that are blow-up marks that you can actually boink right into, and these things would do damage, especially to $8 billion fins.
There would be no boinking on these marks. As Emirates Team New Zealand head into the bottom gate, that completes 2 legs of 6, and they just take it nice and quietly around that mark. There's no panic on that rounding.
It's all right, yeah, pressure inside, huh? I reckon after a yellow blip, before yellow, I reckon. And 3, 2, 1, hurry.
Before yellow, and there's a lousy jive.
You're good. Next on me,
Emirates Team New Zealand dumping just before the bottom gate. Oh yes! Put your hands up to your face. Why wouldn't you? Your boat's been sailing so beautifully, flying down towards the bottom gate, and you've dumped it. But now I'm always intrigued by this, how quickly they get back up on the falls, and there they go again. They're round the bottom gate, but another mistake. This is not smooth. It was smooth up onto that point.
I'd love to see a replay of exactly what happened there, and we can dissect that for the viewers at home. Okay, so let's go. Look at the white water coming off the rudder. The moment the rudder lets go, you lose steerage, and then you load the front foils, and it's pretty much all. Big splash down there. That's exactly what happened to Ben Ainsley yesterday.
Ineos Team UK, will they have made up any time on that splashdown by Emirates Team New Zealand? They get into the bottom gate. Well, they picked up some. They've probably picked up about 5 seconds on that splashdown. So Emirates Team New Zealand still comfortably in front, but scary little moment. Ineos Team UK on course for the top gate for the last time.
Holding high inlet.
And the gap will have strengthened out. Yes, it's well over a minute now. It was 40 seconds at the bottom gate. It'll now be when the clock stops at about 1 minute and 15 behind Emirates Team New Zealand. But you're so right, Nathan. It is a huge win. Getting through this 4-day regatta and knowing you've got weeks to get ready for that January 15 start of the PRADA Cup. Big gains, huge gains.
Yeah, it's a huge win, and now obviously we can see they're not quite as fast as Emirates Team New Zealand, so the next step now that they've got a functioning boat is incremental gains, just small gains. How can we go a little faster? How can we go a little higher? How can we improve our maneuvers a little bit? But man, if you're an Ineos supporter right now, you must be breathing a sigh of relief and going, okay, we've got a boat. We've got something we can work with here. Let's just see how far we can go and how much of a gap we can close.
Spectator fleet sitting on the boundary, getting one of the best views you could ever get if you love your yachting, being on the water and watching these 75-foot flying monohulls do the job, do the business. And right now, that's Emirates Team New Zealand, a 1 minute and 15-second lead on Ineos Team UK, heading towards the finish in race 6 of 8 in the PRADA America's Cup World Series.
That's it, right? Yeah.
They even lost track of I always wonder how they keep track of how many times they go around. You heard Burling just say, "This is it, right?" It's like,
Pretty sure, right? We've been down here twice already.
Yep. See, they're talking about it. Is this it?
Yes, this is it. The finish of race number 6, and it will be a comfortable win to Emirates Team New Zealand, the defender in this 36th America's Cup. That is Mauika North Head, looking towards Rangitoto and the Waitemata Harbour, and I think the direction of the spectator fleet tells it all. Racing has been abandoned in the PRADA America's Cup Christmas Race as the main sheet comes down for Te Rehotai Emirates Team New Zealand. There will be no more racing, even though we only got about 3/4 of a race, and the Christmas Cup is a no-go. The team showed, but Mother Nature didn't allow us too much racing today. Frustrating, but we did get some racing.
Well, Stephen, it was, I guess, we usually call these highlights reels. I'm not so sure we can't reference this as a bit of a lowlights, because it was a race that really kind of was full of, first of all, errors. Ineos, again, really struggles to stay on their foils in this light stuff. In fact, they came off their foils right there at the start and never actually got back up on them again. Team New Zealand sped away, and this is just moments after the start, all the way out to a 500-meter lead. Essentially, Ineos is still back by the starting line, struggling with penalties going outside the border of the race course, and these guys are ripping around the track. So, Nathan, at this stage, we think this is not only going to be a runaway, but it's going to be an easy finish by Emirates Team New Zealand, because they seem to be quite stable on top of the foils.
Yeah, they really showed the design of their boat. They showed the skills of the sailors. They were sailing the boat very well, very smooth, and making their way upwind here once again after doing a complete lap, coming around to lap Ineos Team UK, who still are unable to get out of the water. What it's really showing is that you've got to get your boat set up for all weather conditions, but here it was, that final tack coming to the top mark. They didn't make the foiling tack, and at this point the breeze is really light now, and even Team New Zealand can't get the boat up and foiling, and they spent the entire downwind hugging the sea, just drifting downwind, trying to keep the boat going as fast as they can, and they were racing the clock to get a race finish here. They it looks like they're not racing right now, but they were racing the clock, and they had a nice little match race battle with Ineos Team UK on that run.
The boats came so close to the finish. 45-minute time limit. They missed it by about 30 seconds.
And that's what we got today. So what happens now is the question. Well, it's quite simple. After today, Emirates Team New Zealand disappeared at practice all by themselves until March 16, 2021. And the challengers then begin the chase for the Prada Cup and the Challenger Series. 4 round robins where the teams, well, they've just got to get the most points, because if you get the most points at the end of that 4 round robins, you go straight to the Prada Cup final. And then the remaining 2 will race in the semi-final. It'll be first to 4 wins. And the winner of that goes straight to the Prada Cup final, which is a first to 7 race win battle. And then the Prada Cup champion has then earned the right to challenge Emirates Team New Zealand in the match, the Prada 36th America's Cup, which is again a first to 7 duel. And what a duel that will be. And gentlemen, we're almost out of time here. January 15 doesn't seem that far away. What have we learned briefly?
We've learned that this is an exceptionally exciting new class, and that the television is going to show off sailing like it's never been shown before.
So we are done for the day. This first 4 days has been just a little tease for you as to what these magnificent futuristic AC75s can and cannot do. And there'll be a lot of work between now and January 15 and the start of the Challenger Series for the 3 Challengers. On behalf of all this very hardworking team, Haidada, happy holidays. We shall see you January 15 for the Prada Cup.
Today's America's Cup Racing is brought to you by Prada.